The funeral should have been quieter. That's what I thought as I stood at the back of St. Benedict's Cathedral, watching 200 people file past my father's casket like he'd been some kind of saint. The marble floors echoed with expensive shoes and whispered condolences that meant nothing. Outside, October rain hammered against stained glass windows that had probably cost more than most of these people made in a year. My father had always liked expensive things, expensive cars, expensive suits, expensive lies about who he really was. I adjusted the collar of my black dress, the fabric scratching against skin that hadn't felt comfortable in 3 days. Not since the hospital called, not since they told me Victor Ashford had collapsed in his office, that his heart had simply stopped, that there was nothing anyone could have done. 48 years old, gone in an instant. The official story was a heart attack, stress from running his investment firm, too many late nights, too much coffee, not enough exercise. Everyone nodded along like it made perfect sense, like my father had been just another Wall Street casualty who worked himself to death. But I'd seen the autopsy report before they sealed it, had used every connection from my graduate program to get 5 minutes with the medical examiner's assistant. She'd been nervous, kept looking over her shoulder, but she'd let me see the file. The toxicology panel had been inconclusive. That's what the report said. Inconclusive, which apparently meant they'd found something but couldn't determine what, or wouldn't. The distinction mattered. Miss Ashford. I turned to find Jonathan Pierce standing beside me, my father's business partner of 15 years. Silver hair perfectly styled despite the weather, suit that probably cost $5,000, smile that had always made my skin crawl. Mr. Pierce. Terrible tragedy. Victor was like a brother to me. His hand landed on my shoulder, heavy and presumptuous. If you need anything at all during this difficult time, please don't hesitate to reach out. I've already spoken with the board about maintaining stability at the firm. Maintaining stability, that's what he called it when he'd tried to have me removed from my father's will last year, when he'd suggested I wasn't capable of understanding complex financial matters despite my MBA from Columbia. How thoughtful of you. His eyes narrowed slightly at my tone, but his smile never wavered. Your father would have wanted you taken care of, protected from the more challenging aspects of the business. And what aspects would those be? The ones that require a certain understanding of how things work in our world. He squeezed my shoulder once before letting go. I'm sure we'll speak again soon. Take care of yourself, Vivienne. He walked away before I could respond, probably for the best. This wasn't the time or place to tell him exactly what I thought about his condescending concern. I watched him join a cluster of men near the altar, all of them dressed identically in dark suits that screamed power and money. They spoke in low voices, occasionally glancing toward the casket like they were discussing stock prices instead of a dead colleague. These were my father's associates, his friends supposedly, but none of them had visited him in the hospital during his final hours. None of them had held his hand while machines beeped and monitors showed his life slipping away. That had been me, alone. The cathedral doors opened again, letting in a gust of cold air and rain. I turned instinctively, some part of me still expecting my father to walk through, to tell me this had all been some elaborate test or mistake. Instead, a man entered, tall, maybe 6'2" or 6'3", dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from stone. He wore black like everyone else, but somehow it looked different on him, more natural, like darkness was his preferred state of being. He moved through the crowd with the kind of confidence that made people step aside without realizing they were doing it. Eyes tracked him, whispers followed his path, but he seemed completely indifferent to the attention. His gaze swept the cathedral once, sharp and assessing, before landing on me. My breath caught. I'd never seen him before. Would have remembered if I had. but something about the way he looked at me felt familiar. Not recognition exactly, more like inevitability. He walked toward me with deliberate steps, and the crowd parted like water around a stone. Up close, he was even more imposing. Sharp jaw, dark eyes that seemed to see through all the careful composure I'd built over the past 3 days. A thin scar cut through his left eyebrow, white against olive skin. Vivienne Ashford. Not a question, a statement. His voice was deep, touched with an accent I couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe? Or something close to it. Do I know you? No, but I knew your father. His eyes held mine, unflinching. My condolences on your loss. Victor was a complicated man, but he spoke of you often. Funny, he never mentioned you. I'm not surprised. Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, perhaps? Or assessment? We preferred to keep our association private. What kind of association? The kind best discussed somewhere other than his funeral. He pulled a card from his jacket pocket, held it out to me. Heavy black cardstock with gold lettering. Just a name and a phone number. No title, no company. Dante Moretti. Why would I call you? Because in approximately 2 weeks, you're going to discover that your father's estate is considerably more complicated than you've been led to believe. When that happens, you'll have questions. His fingers brushed mine as I took the card, a brief contact that somehow felt weighted with meaning. I have answers. If you know something about my father's business, you should speak to his lawyers. Lawyers. The word came out with faint contempt. By all means, start there. But when they prove insufficient, call me. He turned to leave, and I should have let him. Should have thrown the card away and focused on getting through the rest of this nightmare day. But something about his certainty, the absolute confidence in his voice when he said I'd call, made me speak. Wait. He paused, glanced back. What makes you so sure I'll need your help? For the first time, he smiled. It wasn't a kind expression. It was the smile of someone who knew secrets, who understood things I didn't, who saw the future unfolding in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. Because your father made certain arrangements before he died, arrangements that involve you and me, whether you like it or not. His eyes held mine one last time. Keep the card, Miss Ashford. You're going to need it. Then he walked away, disappearing into the crowd as smoothly as he'd arrived. I stood there clutching his card, my heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with grief, and everything to do with the sudden certainty that my carefully planned life was about to change in ways I couldn't control. Around me, people continued their whispered conversations. Jonathan Pierce laughed at something one of the board members said. Rain continued to hammer against the windows. My father's casket remained closed, keeping whatever secrets he died with locked away forever. I looked down at the card in my hand. Dante Moretti. I should throw it away, should forget this conversation ever happened, should focus on inheriting my father's firm, on proving to everyone that I was capable of handling his legacy. Instead, I slipped the card into my purse. 2 weeks, he'd said. 2 weeks until everything changed. I had a feeling he wasn't wrong. Chapter 1. The lawyer's office smelled like old money and older secrets. I sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than my monthly rent, watching Harrison Webb shuffle papers across his mahogany desk like he was dealing cards in a game I didn't know I was playing. 70 years old, silver-haired, partner at Webb & Associates for 4 decades. My father had trusted him completely. That should have been my first warning. As I was saying, Miss Ashford, your father's estate is quite substantial. Harrison peered at me over reading glasses that had slipped down his nose. The primary assets include the firm, of course, which is valued at approximately $42 million, the properties in Manhattan and the Hamptons, the investment portfolio. Mr. Webb, I leaned forward, setting my untouched coffee on his desk. I've read the preliminary documents. What I want to know is why it's taken 2 weeks to schedule this meeting, and why Jonathan Pierce keeps calling my apartment at midnight asking about irregularities in my father's accounts. Something flickered across Harrison's face. Discomfort, maybe, or guilt. There are certain complications. What kind of complications? He cleared his throat, adjusted his glasses, did everything possible to avoid meeting my eyes. Finally, he pulled a manila folder from his desk drawer and slid it toward me like it might explode. Your father maintained certain business relationships that were not entirely documented in the official company records. I opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, wire transfers, pages of transactions that made no sense. Hundreds of thousands of dollars moving in and out of accounts I'd never heard of. Companies with names that sounded legitimate but felt wrong. Payments marked only with codes. What is this? Your father's private investments, ventures he pursued independently of the firm. Independently? I looked up from the papers. Or illegally? Harrison flinched. I wouldn't use that word. What word would you use? Complicated. Your father operated in circles that required a certain degree of discretion. Powerful people, influential families, the kind who don't appreciate public scrutiny. My stomach dropped. Are you telling me my father was involved in organized crime? I'm telling you that the world your father inhabited exists in shades of gray rather than black and white. He pulled another folder from his desk. This one was thicker. Which brings me to the matter of his debts. Debts? The preliminary estate valuation showed... The official valuation, yes, but your father borrowed heavily from private sources that are now demanding repayment. He opened the folder. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a number written in bold ink. $8 million. I stared at it, certain I was reading it wrong. That's not possible. My father's assets far exceed. Liquid assets are different from total assets, Miss Ashford. The firm, the properties, the investments, they're all valuable, but they can't be liquidated quickly. And these particular creditors are not interested in waiting for a traditional sale process. Who are these creditors? Harrison's silence was answer enough. I need names, Mr. Webb. I'm not at liberty to. My father is dead. My voice came out harder than I intended. I'm his only heir. I have a right to know who he was involved with. Harrison removed his glasses, cleaned them with a handkerchief from his pocket, replaced them, stalling. When he finally spoke, his voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. The Moretti family. The name hit me like cold water. I pulled Dante's card from my purse, set it on the desk between us. Dante Moretti? Harrison went pale. Where did you get that? He came to my father's funeral, said my father made arrangements that involved both of us. I kept my voice steady despite my racing heart. What arrangements? Miss Ashford, I strongly advise you not to contact that man. The Morettis are extremely dangerous. They control significant portions of the city's underground economy. Gambling, construction, imports. Your father's dealings with them were... He stopped himself. We should explore other options for resolving the debt. What other options? We could petition the court to restructure the estate, sell the firm to a consortium of buyers, liquidate the investment portfolio. How long would that take? 6 months, perhaps longer. And how long before these creditors lose patience? Harrison didn't answer, didn't need to. I could see it in his face. I picked up Dante's card, turned it over in my fingers. The black cardstock felt heavy, substantial, like the man himself. There's something else, isn't there? Something you're not telling me. Harrison opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He looked like a man drowning in information he didn't want to share. Your father signed a contract 3 months before he died, a binding agreement with the Moretti family that included specific terms regarding debt repayment. He pulled yet another folder from his desk. I was starting to hate folders. In the event of his death, the debt would transfer to his heir, to you. That's not legal. You can't transfer personal debt. You can if both parties agree to specific terms, which your father did. Harrison slid the folder across the desk. I'm sorry, Miss Ashford. I advised him against this arrangement, strongly, but he insisted it was necessary to secure certain business protections. I opened the folder with trembling fingers. The contract was dense with legal language, but certain phrases jumped out. Binding obligation, default provisions, alternative settlement arrangements, and at the bottom, 2 signatures. My father's in the bold script I'd seen on birthday cards and school permission slips, and Dante Moretti's, dark and sharp as a blade. What are alternative settlement arrangements? Harrison was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. Then, softly, in families like the Morettis, debts are sometimes resolved through marriage alliances, particularly when the amounts are substantial and the parties involved have value beyond simple monetary exchange. The words registered slowly, like my brain refused to process them. Marriage. It's an old custom, but still practiced in certain circles. You're telling me my father agreed to marry me off to settle a debt? I'm telling you that he agreed to certain provisions that might include that option if traditional payment proved impossible. Harrison finally met my eyes, and what I saw there was genuine remorse. I'm sorry, Vivienne, I truly am, but your father was desperate. The Morettis had information that could have destroyed him. This arrangement was his way of protecting you from worse consequences. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. The room tilted slightly, and I gripped the edge of Harrison's desk to steady myself. I need air. Miss Ashford, I need air, Mr. Webb. I'll contact you when I've had time to process this. I left before he could respond, walking through the reception area on legs that felt disconnected from my body. The secretary called out something about scheduling a follow-up, but I didn't stop, couldn't stop, just kept moving until I was outside in the October afternoon, cold air hitting my face like a slap. $8 million. A contract signed in my name without my knowledge. Marriage to a man I'd met once at my father's funeral. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, stared at Dante's card, told myself I had other options. I could fight this, could hire my own lawyers, could sell everything my father owned and disappear somewhere the Morettis couldn't find me. Except I knew better, had spent enough time in my father's world to understand that people like the Morettis didn't forget debts, didn't accept excuses, and definitely didn't let people simply walk away. 2 weeks, Dante had said, you're going to need it. He'd known, had stood in that cathedral knowing exactly what was coming, what my father had agreed to, what I was about to discover. I dialed the number before I could change my mind. He answered on the first ring. Miss Ashford, I was beginning to think you wouldn't call. His voice sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. I gripped the phone tighter, found my voice. We need to talk. Yes, we do. A pause. There's a restaurant in Little Italy, Carmelo's. Do you know it? I'll find it. 7 o'clock tonight. Come alone. I'm not agreeing to anything. I'm not asking you to. Not yet. Something in his tone shifted, became almost gentle. But we need to discuss your options. What you decide after that is your choice. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my father already made my choices for me. Your father made arrangements. That doesn't mean you're powerless. Another pause. 7 o'clock, Vivienne. I'll be waiting. He hung up before I could respond. I stood there on the sidewalk, watching taxis rush past and people hurry by with their normal problems and normal lives. wondering how my life had turned into something from a crime novel in the span of 2 weeks. Wondering if Dante Moretti was offering me a way out or leading me deeper into darkness. And wondering why some small, reckless part of me wanted to find out. Carmelo's was tucked away on a quiet street that looked like it hadn't changed since the 1950s. Red brick building, narrow windows, a wooden sign that had faded to barely readable. The kind of place tourists never found and locals protected fiercely. I changed 3 times before leaving my apartment, finally settling on black pants and a gray sweater. Professional, neutral, nothing that suggested I was trying to impress anyone. The door was heavy, old wood that groaned when I pushed it open. Inside, the restaurant was small and intimate, maybe 10 tables, half of them empty. Checkered tablecloths, wine bottles lining the walls, the smell of garlic and herbs heavy in the air. Dante sat alone at a corner table, his back to the wall in a position that let him see the entire room. He stood when he saw me, a gesture of courtesy that seemed at odds with everything else about him. "Thank you for coming." Did I have a choice? Always. He pulled out my chair. "Sit, please." I sat, hyper-aware of how close he was as he moved back to his own seat. Up close, in better light than the cathedral had offered, I could see details I'd missed before. The scar through his eyebrow, a thin line along his jaw that might have been from a knife. Hands that looked strong enough to hurt, but moved with surprising grace as he poured wine into my glass. I don't drink when I'm discussing business. This isn't business. He filled his own glass. Not entirely, and you look like you could use it. He wasn't wrong. I picked up the glass, took a small sip. The wine was rich, complex, probably expensive. Everything about this man seemed expensive. Your lawyer told you about the debt. $8 million and a contract my father signed without my knowledge or consent. Victor was a complicated man. Everyone keeps saying that, like it explains why he sold his daughter to pay off his gambling debts. Dante's expression darkened. He didn't gamble, not with my family. The debt was accumulated through other means, business ventures that went poorly, investments that failed. Your father was brilliant in many ways, but he had a weakness for risky opportunities. And you exploited that weakness? We provided capital when traditional sources wouldn't, when his back was against the wall and he had nowhere else to turn. He leaned forward slightly. But you're right that he should have told you about the arrangement. That was a failure on his part. How generous of you to acknowledge that. I'm not trying to be generous. I'm trying to be honest. His dark eyes held mine. You want to know what kind of man I am? I'm the kind who honors contracts, who expects the same from others. Your father signed an agreement in good faith. Now that he's gone, that agreement falls to you. Agreements made under duress aren't legally binding. We're not talking about legal courts, Vivienne. We're talking about honor, reputation, the currency that matters in my world. Your world isn't my world. No, but it was your father's. And now you've inherited more than just his assets. You've inherited his obligations. He took a sip of wine. The question is what you intend to do about it. A waiter appeared with plates of food I hadn't ordered. Pasta with fresh herbs, bread that smelled like heaven. Dante must have called ahead, must have planned this entire evening down to the smallest detail. Eat, he said. We have time. I'm not hungry. You haven't eaten properly in weeks. I can see it in your face. Not criticism, just observation. The next few hours will go better if you're not running on empty. I wanted to argue, but my stomach betrayed me, growling at the smell of food. And something about the way he'd noticed my weight loss, the dark circles I'd been covering with concealer, made me feel seen in a way I hadn't expected. I picked up my fork. We ate in silence for several minutes. The pasta was perfect, rich without being heavy. I'd been living on coffee and anxiety for 2 weeks. This was the first real meal I had since the funeral. Tell me about him, Dante said finally. Your father. What was he like when he wasn't managing debts and business ventures? Why do you care? Because I'm going to marry his daughter. I'd like to understand where she comes from. The casual certainty in his voice made my hand tighten on my fork. You're very confident. I'm realistic. You can walk away, fight this in court, try to build a new life somewhere else. But that life will always have a shadow over it, always have the question of when my family will come to collect. He set down his wine glass. Or you can honor the agreement, marry me, and in doing so, clear your father's debt completely. Just like that, marry a stranger and all my problems disappear? Not disappear, transform. You'll have different problems, but you'll also have protection, resources, a family that takes care of its own. A family involved in organized crime? A family with complicated business interests. He smiled slightly. We prefer that phrasing. What exactly would this marriage entail? In practical terms, you'd live in my home, take my name, appear with me at family functions and business events, present a united front to anyone watching. And in less practical terms, his eyes held mine, something dangerous flickering in their depths. That would be negotiated between us. I'm not asking you to love me, Vivienne. I'm asking you to be my wife. What that means beyond the legal definition is something we'd determine together. How romantic. I'm not offering you romance. I'm offering you a solution. He leaned back in his chair. But I'm not a monster. I wouldn't force myself on you, wouldn't demand things you're not willing to give. The marriage would be real in every legal sense, but what happens behind closed doors would be your choice as much as mine. I studied his face, looking for deception, for the cruelty I'd expected from a man in his position. But all I saw was brutal honesty, a man who dealt in transactions and agreements, who understood the terms he was offering. Why me? If this is just about settling a debt, you could accept a cash payment over time. Because your father offered you specifically. Because a marriage alliance with the Ashford name has value beyond money. And because, he paused, seeming to consider his words. Because when I saw you at the funeral, standing alone while vultures like Jonathan Pierce circled, I thought you deserved better than to be devoured by men who pretended to be your father's friends. So this is charity? This is business, but that doesn't mean it can't benefit us both. The waiter returned to clear our plates, brought espresso neither of us had ordered. The interruption gave me time to think, to process what was being offered. A marriage to clear $8 million in debt? Protection from my father's former associates? A life tied to organized crime? And Dante Moretti himself, dangerous, compelling, looking at me like I was a puzzle he intended to solve. I need time to think about this. Of course, take a week. But Vivienne, he reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. The contact sent electricity up my arm. Understand that this offer has an expiration date. My family is patient, but not infinitely so. And there are others who would be happy to collect your father's debt in less pleasant ways. Is that a threat? It's a reality. I'm offering you the best option available, but I can't protect you if you refuse to let me. He withdrew his hand, pulled an envelope from his jacket, set it on the table between us. This contains the full terms of what I'm proposing. Read it, consider it, and when you're ready to discuss further, call me. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and I realized the dinner was over, that he was leaving me with this impossible decision and walking away. Dante, he paused, looked back. If I agree to this, when would it happen? As soon as you're ready. We'd need to arrange a small ceremony, nothing elaborate, just family and necessary witnesses. His expression softened slightly. I know this isn't the wedding you probably dreamed about, but I'll try to make it as painless as possible. Then he was gone, moving through the restaurant with that same commanding presence, leaving me alone with an envelope full of terms and conditions for selling my freedom. I sat there until my espresso went cold, until the waiter started giving me concerned looks, until I finally opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were legal documents, clear, precise, outlining exactly what marriage to Dante Moretti would entail, the financial arrangements, the living situation, the expectations for public appearances, and at the bottom, a handwritten note in sharp, angular script. You deserve a choice your father never gave you. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. But I meant what I said at the cathedral. You're going to need help navigating the world your father left behind. Let me be that help. D. I folded the papers, slipped them back into the envelope, left enough cash on the table to cover a meal I hadn't ordered. Outside, the October night had turned cold. I pulled my coat tighter and started walking, no destination in mind, just needing to move, to think. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Make sure you get home safely. The city isn't as safe as it used to be. I looked around, suddenly aware that I was being watched. Protected, maybe? Or monitored. With Dante Moretti, the line between the two was probably very thin. I texted back, "Are you having me followed?" The response came immediately. "I'm having you protected. There's a difference." I should have been angry, should have felt violated, but standing alone on a dark street in a neighborhood I didn't know, I felt something else entirely. Safe. And that scared me more than anything else that had happened tonight. Chapter 2. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table reading Dante's contract until the words blurred together, reading my father's will until I'd memorized every clause, searching online for information about the Moretti family until my laptop screen burned my eyes. What I found wasn't encouraging. The Morettis had been in Boston for over a century, started with Dante's great-grandfather running protection rackets in the Italian neighborhoods. By the time his grandfather took over, they'd expanded into construction, waste management, importing, legitimate businesses built on illegitimate foundations. Dante's father, Vincent Moretti, had died 8 years ago. Heart attack, according to the obituary. But the rumors online suggested otherwise. Whispers of a power struggle, a deal gone wrong, the kind of death that happened in this world but never made official reports. Dante had been 24 when he inherited the family business, young for that kind of power. But every article I found, every mention of his name, suggested he'd consolidated control ruthlessly, efficiently. The Moretti territory had expanded under his leadership. Other families had learned to respect his boundaries. Or else. At 6 a.m, I gave up on sleep entirely, made coffee strong enough to strip paint, stood at my apartment window watching the city wake up, wondering if I was really considering this. Marriage to a criminal? Except when I closed my eyes, I didn't see a criminal. I saw Dante's hand brushing mine across the table, heard his voice saying, "You deserve a choice," felt the strange safety of knowing someone was watching over me in the darkness. My phone rang. Unknown number. My heart jumped before I could stop it. "Hello? Miss Ashford, it's Harrison Webb. I'm sorry to call so early, but we need to speak urgently." The fear in his voice made my stomach drop. What's wrong? Jonathan Pierce filed an emergency petition with the probate court yesterday afternoon. He's claiming your father was mentally incompetent when he revised his will, that his death was suspicious, that the estate should be frozen pending investigation. Can he do that? He already did. The judge granted a temporary freeze on all assets, which means you can't access your father's accounts, can't sell any properties, can't make any decisions about the firm. Papers rustled on his end. "Vivienne, I think Jonathan knows about the Moretti debt. I think he's trying to force you into a position where you can't pay it." "Why would he do that?" "Because if you default, the Morettis will come after the estate, the firm, everything, and Jonathan has been positioning himself to buy controlling interest at a fraction of its value." Harrison's voice dropped. "Your father suspected something like this might happen. It's part of why he made the arrangement with Dante Moretti. He thought protection from that family would keep men like Jonathan from circling like sharks. I pressed my forehead against the cold window glass. How long will the freeze last? Minimum of 60 days, possibly longer if Jonathan can drag out the investigation. And the Moretti debt? Silence, then quietly. I assume you have less than 60 days before they expect some form of payment. I hung up without saying goodbye, stood there watching cars navigate the morning traffic, people rushing to normal jobs with normal problems. My father had been trying to protect me. In his own terrible way, he'd made a deal with the devil because he knew what would happen if he didn't. Knew that Jonathan Pierce and men like him would tear apart everything he'd built, would leave me with nothing. Unless I agreed to marry the other devil. I pulled out my phone, found Dante's number, stared at it for a long moment. "You deserve a choice," he'd written. But if this was the only choice that kept my father's legacy intact, that kept me safe from men like Jonathan Pierce, that honored the agreement my father had died believing would protect me, was it really a choice at all? I dialed before I could change my mind. Dante answered immediately. "Vivienne, the estate has frozen. Jonathan Pierce filed a petition claiming my father was incompetent. I can't access any accounts for at least 60 days. "I know. I heard about it an hour ago." "Of course you did." I took a breath. "Which means I can't pay the debt even if I wanted to, which means I need to make a decision about your proposal." "And have you made a decision?" I closed my eyes, thought about my father's signature on that contract, about the way Dante had looked at me across the dinner table like I mattered, about the text message telling me to get home safely. "Yes, I'll marry you." The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, softly, "Are you certain?" "No, but I don't see another option that doesn't end with me losing everything my father worked for. Or worse." "Worse?" Jonathan Pierce is dangerous in his own way, and I have a feeling if the Morettis don't collect their debt, someone else will try to collect me. "You're not wrong." A pause. "I'll send a car for you this afternoon. We need to discuss arrangements. But, Vivienne..." "Yes?" I meant what I said, about choice, about respect. This marriage might be a transaction on paper, but I don't want you to feel like a prisoner. "What do I feel like then?" "A partner, an ally, someone I'm choosing to protect because your father asked me to, and because you deserve better than what this city's vultures would give you." Something in my chest loosened slightly. "What time should I expect the car?" 2:00. "Wear something comfortable. We're going somewhere we can talk privately." He hung up. I stood there holding my phone, feeling like I'd just jumped off a cliff and wasn't sure if I'd hit water or rocks at the bottom. The car that arrived at 2:00 was exactly what I expected. Black SUV, tinted windows, driver who looked like he could break someone in half without breaking a sweat. He opened the door without speaking, waited for me to climb in, then drove us out of my neighborhood in silence. I changed into jeans and a sweater like Dante suggested. Comfortable, though nothing about this situation felt comfortable. We drove for 30 minutes, leaving the city behind. Trees replaced buildings. Space replaced crowds. Finally, the car turned down a private road that wound through acres of forest before emerging at a house. Except house wasn't the right word. Estate, manor, something that belonged in European countryside, not Massachusetts. Stone walls covered in ivy, tall windows, gardens that probably required a full-time staff to maintain, a fountain in the circular drive that looked like it belonged in Rome. This was where Dante Moretti lived. The driver opened my door. I stepped out, taking in the scale of the place. My entire apartment could probably fit in the garage. Impressive, isn't it? I turned to find Dante walking down the front steps. He traded his usual suit for dark jeans and a black sweater that somehow made him look more dangerous rather than less, more human, more real. It's bigger than I expected. My grandfather built it, said if he was going to live in America, he'd do it properly. Dante gestured toward the house. Come inside, I'll show you around. I followed him through doors that probably weighed more than I did, into an entrance hall with marble floors and a chandelier that belonged in a museum. Everything was elegant, expensive, perfectly maintained. Do you live here alone? Mostly. I have staff who come during the day, security who rotate shifts, but at night, it's usually just me. He led me through a series of rooms, each more beautiful than the last. A library with floor-to-ceiling books, a dining room with a table that could seat 20, a kitchen that looked like something from a magazine. This would be your home too, after we're married. I stopped walking. The reality of what I'd agreed to hit me fresh. This house, this life, this man. Show me where I'd sleep. Something flickered in Dante's eyes. This way. He led me upstairs, down a hallway lined with paintings that were probably originals, stopped at a door near the end. This would be your room, private, your own space. He opened the door. The bedroom was stunning, large windows overlooking the gardens, a 4-poster bed with cream-colored linens, furniture that looked antique but comfortable, a door that led to what I assumed was a private bathroom. And your room? Down the hall, separate. Like I said, what happens between us is your choice. I walked to the window, looked out at gardens that probably bloomed beautifully in spring. This feels surreal, like I'm touring a house I could never afford, not looking at where I might live. You don't have to decide now about any of it. Dante stayed near the doorway, giving me space. We could do this in stages. Get married to satisfy the contract, live separately for a while, let you adjust. Why are you being so accommodating? Because forcing someone into intimacy they're not ready for isn't my style, and because... He paused. Because I remember what it's like to have your life chosen for you, to inherit obligations you never asked for. I turned to face him. Your father? My father left me an empire built on violence and fear, left me no choice but to step into his role or watch everything collapse. His jaw tightened. I've spent 8 years trying to make this family into something different, something that operates on respect rather than terror. I'm not going to start my marriage by terrorizing my wife. The word wife sent a shiver through me that I couldn't quite identify. Fear, anticipation, something between. When would we do this? The wedding? As soon as possible. This weekend if you're willing. He must have seen my expression because he added quickly, small ceremony, just immediate family and necessary witnesses. My sister, your brother if you want him there, a priest I know who won't ask too many questions. Tyler, I'd barely thought about my brother in all of this. 23 years old, still in graduate school, the only family I had left. I'd have to tell him something. Tell him the truth, or as much of it as you're comfortable sharing. That I'm marrying a crime lord to pay off our father's debts? I'm sure he'll take that well. Would you rather lie to him? I'd rather not be in this situation at all. Dante crossed the room then, moving with that same deliberate grace. He stopped close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. I know this isn't what you wanted. No, it's not the life you planned, but I'll do everything in my power to make sure you don't regret this decision. His hand lifted, hovering near my face, but not quite touching. You have my word on that. The word of a criminal? The word of a man who keeps his promises. We stood like that for a long moment, his hand near my cheek, my heart pounding, some invisible line between us that neither of us was quite ready to cross. Finally, he stepped back. "There's something else you should see, something I want you to understand before you commit to this." "What?" "The reality of my world, not the version you've read about online, the actual truth." He led me back downstairs, through parts of the house I hadn't seen yet. At the back, hidden behind a door that looked like part of the wall, were stairs leading down. "Dante, trust me, you need to see this." The basement was nothing like the elegant rooms above. This was all business. Concrete floors, bare walls, a large space that looked like it had once been wine storage but had been converted into something else entirely. An office, but not a normal one. Computers lined one wall, multiple screens showing what looked like security feeds. Maps covered another wall, marked with territories and boundaries. A conference table sat in the center, papers spread across its surface. "This is where I actually work, where the real decisions get made." Dante gestured to the maps. "These are the territories the Moretti family controls. Docks, construction zones, shipping routes. Everything marked in red is ours. Blue is the Calabrese family. Green is what's left of the Russian operation." I moved closer, studying the maps. Boston divided up like a board game, territories instead of properties. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because if you marry me, you become part of this whether you want to or not. People will watch you, try to use you to get information. You need to understand what you're walking into." "And what am I walking into?" He pulled out a chair, gestured for me to sit. Then he pulled out a folder, set it on the table. "Jonathan Pierce isn't just trying to steal your father's firm. He's been working with the Calabrese family, laundering their money through the investment accounts. Your father found out 6 months ago, threatened to expose the whole operation." My stomach dropped. "That's why he's trying to freeze the estate. He wants to hide the evidence." "Exactly. And if the Morettis hadn't offered your father protection, Jonathan would have had him killed 6 months ago instead of waiting for nature to take its course." "Nature?" I looked up sharply. "You think Jonathan killed my father?" "I think your father's heart attack was very convenient timing, and I think the medical examiner who sealed that report too quickly has a gambling problem that Jonathan knows about." The room tilted slightly. I gripped the edge of the table. "My father was murdered." "I can't prove it, not yet. But yes, I believe so." "And you didn't tell me this before I agreed to marry you?" "Would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was manipulating you?" Dante's voice was gentle. "I needed you to make the decision first, to choose this alliance. Now I'm showing you why it matters." He opened the folder. Inside were documents, photographs, bank records, evidence of Jonathan Pierce's partnership with the Calabrese family, proof that my father had been investigating the money laundering. And at the bottom, a copy of my father's original medical report, the one that had been sealed, the one showing elevated toxins in his blood that had never been explained. "He was poisoned," I whispered. Slowly, over several months, small doses that mimicked stress-related heart damage. Dante's hand covered mine on the table. "Your father knew someone was trying to kill him. That's why he made the deal with my family. He wanted you protected when he was gone." Tears burned my eyes. I blinked them back, refusing to cry in front of this man, refusing to show that kind of weakness. "What do we do?" "We get married, publicly announce the alliance between our families, and then we methodically destroy Jonathan Pierce and everyone working with him." His fingers tightened on mine. "But I need you all in, Vivienne. Need you to trust me even when things get dangerous. Can you do that?" I looked down at our joined hands, at the evidence of my father's murder spread across the table, at the maps showing territory lines that meant nothing to me, but everything to Dante's world. My father had made this arrangement to protect me, had died knowing that I'd be safe if I just accepted the deal he'd made, and Jonathan Pierce had killed him to steal everything he'd built. "I can do that." I met Dante's eyes, "but I want something in return." "Name it." When we have enough evidence, when we can prove what Jonathan did, I want to be there. I want to see his face when he realizes he's lost. A slow smile spread across Dante's face, not the controlled expression he usually wore, something more genuine, more dangerous. You're going to fit in this family better than I expected. Don't get used to it. I'm still a doctor, still believe in saving lives, not destroying them. You can be both. The question is whether you're willing to learn. He stood, pulled me up with him. We were close again, that same charged proximity from earlier. His hand still held mine. Saturday, he said. We'll get married Saturday. Small ceremony at my family's church. Then we'll start planning how to make Jonathan Pierce pay for what he did. Saturday. 3 days. 3 days until I became Vivienne Moretti. Until I entered this world completely. Unless you need more time? I thought about my father, about Jonathan Pierce sitting in his office believing he'd won, about the life I'd planned that had died along with my father in that hospital. Saturday is fine, but Dante? Yes? If we're doing this, if I'm going to be your wife and your partner in whatever comes next, then no more secrets. No more protecting me from the truth. I need to know everything. His dark eyes searched mine. Then he nodded. No more secrets. We face everything together. He lifted my hand, pressed his lips to my knuckles in a gesture that felt oddly formal, oddly intimate. Welcome to the family, Vivienne. Try not to let it consume you. Then he smiled, and I realized with sudden clarity that I was already halfway consumed, that somewhere between the funeral and this moment, I'd stopped thinking about escape and started thinking about revenge. My father would have been horrified. Or maybe, considering the deal he'd made, he'd expected this all along. Chapter 3. Tyler arrived at my apartment Thursday evening with takeout Chinese food and an expression that promised interrogation. I'd texted him Wednesday asking if he could come up from New York for the weekend. Hadn't explained why, just said it was important. Now he sat on my couch, chopsticks paused halfway to his mouth, staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You're getting married this Saturday. Yes? To a man you met 2 weeks ago? Technically 3 weeks, at Dad's funeral. Vivienne. He set down his food with the careful deliberation of someone trying very hard not to explode. What the hell is going on? I'd rehearsed this conversation a dozen times, tried to find words that would make it sound less insane. Failed every time. Finally decided the truth, or most of it, was the only option. Dad was in debt. Serious debt. $8 million to a very dangerous family. Tyler's face went pale. What family? The Morettis. I know who they are. Everyone in the city knows who they are. He stood up, started pacing my small living room. Dad borrowed money from the Mafia? What was he thinking? He was thinking he needed protection from his business partner, from Jonathan Pierce. I pulled out the folder Dante had given me, spread the evidence across my coffee table. Jonathan was laundering money for the Calabrese family. Dad found out, threatened to expose him, so Jonathan poisoned him. The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler stared at the documents, his face cycling through disbelief, horror, rage. Dad was murdered. Yes. And you know this because the Mafia told you? Because Dante Moretti gave me evidence. Dad made a deal with the Morettis before he died. Protection in exchange for, I took a breath, in exchange for me, a marriage alliance to settle the debt and ensure I'd be protected after he was gone. Tyler sat down hard. So you're marrying this guy to honor Dad's deal? I'm marrying him because the alternative is losing everything Dad built and probably ending up dead myself. Jonathan Pierce has already frozen the estate. He's trying to steal the firm, and without the Moretti family protecting me, I'd be an easy target. There has to be another way. We could go to the FBI, tell them about the money laundering. With what evidence? Everything I have came from Dante. Who do you think the FBI would believe? A respected investment banker or the daughter of a dead man allied with known criminals? I leaned forward. Tyler, I've thought about every option. This is the only one that keeps me safe and gives us a chance to make Jonathan pay for what he did. My brother ran his hands through his hair, a gesture so like our father it made my chest ache. What's he like, this Dante guy? Dangerous, intense, but also, I paused, trying to find the right words, honest in his own way. He's not pretending this is a love match. It's a business arrangement that benefits both of us. And he's given me his word that I'll have choices, that he won't force anything I'm not ready for. The word of a criminal. The word of a man who keeps his promises. There's a difference. Tyler was quiet for a long moment. Then, you really want to do this? Marry into that world? Want? No. But I'm not going to let Dad's death be for nothing. I'm not going to let Jonathan Pierce win. And if marrying Dante Moretti is what it takes, I met my brother's eyes, then that's what I'll do. He studied my face, looking for doubt, for fear. Whatever he saw there must have convinced him, because he finally nodded. Okay, if you're doing this, then I'm there Saturday. Someone from our actual family should witness this disaster. It's not going to be a disaster. You're marrying a mafia boss you barely know to settle a debt and avenge Dad's murder. That's literally the plot of a disaster. Despite everything, I smiled. When you put it that way, how else should I put it? But he was smiling too, that slightly crooked smile that made him look younger than 23. Just promise me something. What? If it gets too dangerous, if you need out, you call me, no matter what. We're the only family each other has left. I crossed the room, pulled him into a hug. I promise. But Tyler, I think I can handle this. That's what worries me. Friday morning, I woke to find a text from an unknown number. A car will pick you up at 10. We need to discuss tomorrow. D. No request, no question. Just an assumption that I'd be available. I should have been annoyed. Instead, I found myself showering and changing into clothes that seemed appropriate for meeting my future husband. Black pants, cream blouse, leather jacket. Professional, but not trying too hard. The car arrived exactly at 10. Same driver as before, same silent efficiency. This time we drove into the city, to a neighborhood I recognized as Little Italy. We pulled up outside a boutique with elegant script on the window. Russo's Bridal. My stomach flipped. Of course, the wedding was tomorrow. I'd need something to wear. The driver opened my door. Mr. Moretti is waiting inside. The boutique was small and clearly exclusive. No racks of white dresses, no crowds of brides. Just elegant simplicity and a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a 1950s Italian film. You must be Vivienne. She had a slight accent, warm and welcoming. I'm Lucia Russo, Dante called ahead. Come, come. Dante stood near the back of the boutique, talking quietly with another woman. When he saw me, something shifted in his expression. Appreciation, maybe? Or assessment. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? Always, but I'm glad you chose to be here. He gestured to the woman beside him. This is my sister, Isabella. The woman stepped forward, and I saw the family resemblance immediately. Same dark eyes, same sharp features. But where Dante radiated controlled danger, Isabella seemed lighter somehow, warmer. It's lovely to meet you. She took my hands, kissed both my cheeks in the European style. Welcome to the family. I apologize for the rushed circumstances. Your brother explained the situation. My brother has a talent for understatement. She glanced at Dante with affection mixed with exasperation. But he also has good instincts about people. If he chose you, there's a reason. He chose me because our father made a deal. He chose to honor that deal instead of finding another solution. Believe me, there are always other solutions in our world, usually violent ones. Isabella squeezed my hands, but let's not dwell on that today. Today we find you something beautiful to wear tomorrow. Lucia returned with several dresses draped over her arm. Not traditional wedding gowns. These were elegant, sophisticated, the kind of dresses you could wear again. I wasn't sure what style you'd prefer, Dante said quietly, so I asked Lucia to pull options that seemed like you. Classic, understated, beautiful. The fact that he thought about my style at all caught me off guard. Thank you. Try them on. Take your time. Isabella will help you. He left before I could respond, disappearing into what looked like an office in the back, giving me space, giving me privacy with his sister. Isabella guided me to a changing area. I know this must be overwhelming, marrying someone you barely know, entering a world that's foreign to everything you understand. That's putting it mildly. But Dante is a good man, better than our father was, better than most men in this life. She helped me into the first dress, a simple cream sheath with delicate lace sleeves. He spent 8 years trying to transform our family into something honorable, something our mother would have been proud of. Your mother? She died when I was 12. Dante was 16. A car accident that everyone pretended was random, but we both knew wasn't. Isabella's voice went quiet. After that, our father changed, became harder, more violent. Dante had to become the same just to survive. But underneath, she met my eyes in the mirror. Underneath, he's still the brother who read me stories and taught me to ride a bike, who promised he'd protect me no matter what. I looked at my reflection. The dress was beautiful, simple and elegant, exactly something I would choose. He's protecting me too, because of a deal my father made. No, he's protecting you because he wants to. The deal gave him an excuse, but I saw his face when he talked about you, saw something I haven't seen in years. What? Hope. Isabella smiled. Try the next one. I think you'll like it even better. She was right. The second dress was perfect. Ivory silk that fell in clean lines, a subtle V-neck, 3/4 sleeves, elegant without being ostentatious, the kind of dress that suggested a wedding without screaming it. I stepped out of the changing area to show Lucia, who made appreciative sounds and adjusted the stitch slightly. Then I noticed Dante had returned, standing near the front of the boutique, watching. Our eyes met in the mirror. For a moment, neither of us moved, just held that gaze while something unspoken passed between us, something that felt dangerously close to understanding. That's the one, he said quietly. You're sure? I'm sure. We left the boutique an hour later after Lucia promised to have the dress delivered to Dante's estate that evening. Isabella hugged me goodbye, whispered be patient with him in my ear, then left in her own car, which left me alone with Dante on a sidewalk in Little Italy. Hungry? He asked. Starving. He smiled, that rare, genuine expression that transformed his face. Come on, I know a place. We walked 3 blocks to a small cafe tucked between a bakery and a butcher shop, the kind of place locals protected fiercely from tourists. Inside, the owner greeted Dante like family, kissed both his cheeks, led us to a corner table without asking if we wanted one. You come here often? Every Friday. My mother used to bring me here when I was a kid, said the best way to know a neighborhood was to eat where the families ate. He ordered in rapid Italian, then turned his attention back to me. How's Tyler handling the news? About as well as expected. He thinks I'm insane. He's not wrong. That's comforting. I'm not trying to comfort you. I'm trying to be honest. Dante leaned back in his chair, studying me. You've handled this entire situation with remarkable composure. Most people would have fallen apart by now. Maybe I'm good at hiding it. Or maybe you're stronger than you think. The owner returned with wine and bread, then disappeared again. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind that suggested we'd done this 100 times before, instead of being strangers bound by contract. Tell me about your mother, I said finally. Isabella mentioned she died when you were 16. Something flickered across Dante's face. Old pain, carefully controlled. She was the best person I knew. Kind, strong, loved my father despite knowing exactly what he was. He took a sip of wine. She used to say that every person carried both light and darkness. The question was which one you chose to feed. And which do you feed? Whichever one keeps my family safe. He met my eyes. But I'm trying to choose the light more often, trying to be the man she wanted me to be, rather than the one my father forced me to become. Is that why you agreed to honor my father's deal? Because it was the honorable choice? Partly. Also because when I saw you at the funeral, standing alone while vultures circled, I recognized something. What? The same look I had in the mirror the day my mother died. The look of someone who just realized the world was more dangerous than they'd believed, and that they'd have to become dangerous too, just to survive. The food arrived. Pasta with sauce that smelled like heaven. We ate in silence for several minutes, both lost in thoughts we weren't ready to share. What happens after tomorrow? I asked finally. After we're married? We present a united front. You move into the estate, we attend family functions together, show the world that the Moretti and Ashford families are allied. And behind closed doors? We figure it out as we go, he set down his fork. Vivienne, I meant what I said. I'm not going to force intimacy you're not ready for, but I also won't pretend we're just roommates. This marriage is real. The question is how real we let it become. You make it sound like a choice. It is. Every day we'll choose how to be with each other, whether to stay distant or grow closer, whether to make this work or just survive it. I took a long sip of wine, trying to process what he was offering. A marriage that could be whatever we made it. A partnership that started with obligation, but could become something else. You make it sound like a choice. It is. Every day we'll choose how to be with each other, whether to stay distant or grow closer, whether to make this work or just survive it. I took a long sip of wine, trying to process what he was offering. A marriage that could be whatever we made it. A partnership that started with obligation, but could become something else. If I was brave enough to let it, what do you want it to become? I asked. Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then softly, something real, something that honors what our parents wanted while becoming ours, but that requires both of us choosing it. I can't make you fall in love with me, Vivienne. I can only give you reasons to consider it. Love? We barely know each other. No, but we could, if you're willing to try. The weight of that statement settled between us. An invitation, a promise, a dare. I don't know if I can love someone like you. Someone like me. Someone who lives in violence, who solves problems with fear and force. I'm trying to change that, build something different, but I can't pretend my past doesn't exist. He leaned forward. The question is whether you can accept all of me, the darkness and the light, the criminal and the man trying to be better. I thought about my father, about the deal he'd made, about choosing to save lives while being complicit in a world that took them. I don't know, but I'm here tomorrow. That has to count for something. It counts for everything. We finished our meal. Dante paid, helped me into my jacket, walked me to the car waiting outside. Before the driver could open the door, Dante caught my hand. Vivienne, tomorrow when we say those vows, I need you to understand something. What? I won't break them. Whatever happens between us, whatever we become to each other, I'll honor the promises I make to you, even the ones you don't ask for. His thumb brushed across my knuckles, a touch so gentle it sent shivers up my arm. Then he released me, stepped back. Get some rest. Tomorrow changes everything. I climbed into the car, watched him stand on the sidewalk as we pulled away, watched him until distance and traffic made him disappear. Tomorrow, I'd become Vivienne Moretti. Tomorrow, I'd marry a man I barely knew. Tomorrow, I'd step fully into a world of violence and power and complicated honor. And somewhere in the past 3 weeks, I'd stopped being terrified of that future and started being curious about it. Started wondering if Dante Moretti might be the most dangerous thing that ever happened to me. Or the best. Saturday dawned clear and cold. October in its full glory, leaves turning gold and red, the kind of crisp autumn day that felt like new beginnings. I stood in my apartment one last time, looking at the space I'd called home for 5 years. After today, I'd live in Dante's estate, sleep in that beautiful bedroom overlooking gardens, wake up married to a man who promised me choices but asked for everything. My phone buzzed. Tyler. I'm outside. Ready? I picked up my small overnight bag, everything else would be moved later, and took one last look around. Then I locked the door and left my old life behind. Tyler waited in the lobby, wearing a suit I'd never seen before. He looked older somehow, more serious. You look good, I told him. You look terrified. I am terrified. We could still run. I have my car. We could drive to Canada, start over. I smiled despite the anxiety eating at my stomach. And let Jonathan Pierce win? Let Dad's death mean nothing? There are worse things than losing a company. Name one. Losing yourself. I hugged him tight. I'm not losing myself. I'm choosing a different version of who I could be. I hope you're right. The car Dante sent was waiting outside, bigger this time, with room for both of us. The driver nodded politely as we climbed in. Where are we going? Tyler asked. St. Anthony's Church. Small ceremony, just family. His family. And you. You're my family. Tyler took my hand, squeezed it. I'm here. Whatever happens, I'm here. We drove through the city in silence, past neighborhoods I knew, into one I didn't, finally pulling up outside a small stone church that looked like it had been transplanted from Italy. St. Anthony's was beautiful in an understated way. Old stone, stained glass windows showing saints I didn't recognize, wooden pews worn smooth by generations of worship. Dante waited at the altar, wearing a dark suit that looked like it cost more than my entire wardrobe. His sister stood beside him, wearing a deep blue dress. A priest in traditional vestments stood ready. And that was it. No crowd, no elaborate decorations, just the people who mattered. Dante's eyes found mine the moment I walked through the door. Something flickered in his expression. Relief, maybe, or something deeper. I walked down the aisle on Tyler's arm, each step feeling both impossible and inevitable. When we reached the altar, my brother kissed my cheek and whispered, "Not too late to run." Yes, it is. Then Tyler stepped back, and I was face to face with Dante. You look beautiful, he said quietly. You look nervous. I am. I've faced down rival families, negotiated million-dollar deals, survived attempts on my life. But standing here with you, he smiled slightly, this might be the most terrifying thing I've ever done. That makes two of us. The priest began speaking in Italian. I caught maybe one word in 5, but I understood the important parts, the promises being asked, the commitment being made. When it was time for the vows, Dante turned to face me fully, took both my hands in his. I promise to protect you, to honor you, to give you choices even when they complicate my life, to be honest even when the truth is difficult, and to build with you something worthy of the sacrifice your father made. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly. I can't promise to be easy to love, but I promise to be worth the effort. The priest looked at me expectantly. I was supposed to repeat traditional vows, but looking into Dante's dark eyes, I found myself saying something different. I promise to trust you until you give me reason not to stand beside you even when the world we're building feels impossible, to be honest about what I need and what I can give, and to try. My voice caught. To try to see the man you're becoming instead of just the one you were forced to be. Dante's eyes widened slightly. Then he smiled, and it was the most genuine expression I'd seen from him. The priest continued, blessing rings I hadn't known about until Dante pulled them from his pocket. Simple gold bands. His slipped onto my finger perfectly, mine onto his with careful deliberation. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Dante looked at me, asking permission. I nodded, just barely. His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. Then he kissed me, gentle and careful, like I was something precious that might break. And in that moment, standing in a small church with strangers and my brother as witnesses, I felt something shift. Felt the weight of what we'd just done. Felt the beginning of something I couldn't name yet, but recognized as important. When we broke apart, Isabella was crying softly. Tyler looked like he was either going to throw up or punch someone. And Dante was looking at me like I'd just given him something he didn't know he needed. "Hello, Mrs. Moretti," he whispered. "Hello, husband." And just like that, my life became something else entirely. Chapter 4. The reception was held at Dante's estate in a garden that had been transformed while we were at the church. White lights strung through trees, tables set with crystal and silver, a small orchestra playing something classical and beautiful. I'd expected something larger, more ostentatious, a display of power and wealth, but this was intimate, elegant, almost romantic if I ignored why we were here. Surprised? Dante's hand rested on the small of my back as he guided me through the garden. I expected more people. This is family only, close associates, the people who matter. He gestured to a table where Isabella sat with an older couple I didn't recognize. My aunt and uncle. They raised me after my mother died, when my father was too consumed with business to be a parent. Will I meet them? You'll meet everyone, though I should warn you, my Aunt Rosa is going to have opinions about everything from your dress to our sleeping arrangements. Our sleeping arrangements? She's traditional, will expect us to share a room despite what we agreed privately. His thumb brushed against my back, a touch that seemed unconscious. We can handle that however you're comfortable. Before I could respond, Isabella appeared with champagne and a knowing smile. You survived the ceremony. That's the hard part done. Is it? I accepted the champagne gratefully. Well, now you just have to survive marriage to my brother, which is arguably harder. She winked at Dante. Come on, there are people waiting to meet the bride. The next hour passed in a blur of introductions. Dante's Aunt Rosa, who immediately pulled me into a crushing hug and declared I was too thin. His Uncle Marco, who studied me with sharp eyes before nodding approval. Various cousins and associates whose names I'd never remember. And through it all, Dante stayed close, his hand on my back, his presence at my elbow, making introductions, deflecting invasive questions, playing the role of attentive husband so convincingly I almost forgot it was a performance. Tyler found me near the champagne table, looking slightly overwhelmed. This is surreal. These people are treating this like a real wedding. It is a real wedding. You know what I mean. They're acting like you and Dante are actually in love. He glanced across the garden to where Dante stood talking with an older man in an expensive suit. Though I have to admit, he plays the part well. The way he looks at you. It's an act. We both know what this is. Do you? Tyler studied my face. Because from where I'm standing, you look at him the same way. I barely know him. That's not what I asked. Before I could respond, Dante returned to my side, slipping his arm around my waist with casual possession. Sorry to interrupt, but my aunt is insisting on a first dance. Apparently it's tradition. He looked down at me, something almost apologetic in his expression. Can you manage, or would you prefer to skip it? The old Vivienne would have said yes to skipping it, would have avoided any unnecessary intimacy. But standing there in my wedding dress, wearing his ring, I found myself saying, I can manage. The orchestra shifted to something slower, more romantic. Dante led me to the center of the garden where space had been cleared for dancing. His hand settled at my waist, mine on his shoulder. We moved together with surprising ease. You're a good dancer. My mother insisted Isabella and I learn, said it was part of being civilized. His dark eyes held mine. You're better than I expected. Ballet lessons when I was young. My mother had similar ideas about being civilized. Tell me about her, your mother. We turned slowly, finding rhythm together. She was a surgeon too, cardiac specialist. That's why I went into medicine, wanted to be like her. My throat tightened. She died when I was 19, car accident on the way home from the hospital. I'm sorry. So am I. She would have loved seeing me become a doctor, would have hated seeing me marry into your world. Probably. His hand tightened slightly at my waist. But she also would have wanted you protected, safe. Sometimes love means accepting difficult choices. We danced in silence for a moment. Other couples joined us. Isabella with someone who looked like a peasant, Tyler reluctantly dancing with Rosa, who was probably a foot shorter than him. What happens now? I asked quietly. After tonight. We go home, start figuring out what our life looks like. His thumb brushed against my side. Tomorrow I have business to handle. You'll need to start moving your things from the apartment. But tonight, he paused. Tonight, we can just be. Just be what? Whatever feels right. The song ended. Another began immediately, faster this time. Dante didn't let me go, just adjusted our position and kept dancing, like he wasn't ready to release me yet. And the dangerous thing was, I wasn't ready to be released. The party wound down around 10. Guests departed with hugs and well wishes and significant looks that suggested everyone knew exactly what was expected to happen next. Isabella hugged me tight, whispered, "Be yourself with him," before leaving with her uncle and aunt. Tyler was the last to go, pulling me aside near the garden entrance. "You sure about this? I can stay if you need moral support." "I'm married, Tyler. I think moral support time has passed. I'm serious. If you need an escape plan, if things get weird or scary or—" "I'll call you, I promise." I hugged him. "Go home, get some rest. I'll talk to you tomorrow." He left reluctantly, glancing back twice like he expected me to change my mind and run after him, which left me alone with Dante in a garden full of empty tables and dying lights. "Come on," he held out his hand. "Let me show you something." I took his hand, let him lead me through the garden to a path I hadn't noticed before. It wound through trees, lit by small solar lights, ending at a greenhouse that glowed from within. My mother's project. She loved gardens, spent hours here growing things. Dante opened the door and warmth enveloped us. Inside, plants grew in organized chaos. Orchids and roses, herbs I recognized and some I didn't. A small fountain gurgled in the corner. It's beautiful. Isabella maintains it now, says it keeps her connected to our mother. He moved through the space with familiarity, touching leaves, adjusting a pot. I come here when I need to think, when the weight of what I do becomes too much. Do you think about the weight? He turned to face me. Every day, every decision I make affects hundreds of people, family, associates, the people who depend on our protection. That's not something I take lightly. But you still do it, still participate in a world that hurts people. I'm trying to transform it, make it less about violence and more about legitimate power. But change takes time, and there are people who resist it. His jaw tightened. People like Jonathan Pierce, who profit from the old ways, who see change as weakness. When do we move against him? You said we'd make him pay. Soon, but we need to be strategic, gather more evidence, make sure when we strike, it's fatal. He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne. You'll need to be patient and careful. Jonathan doesn't know about our marriage yet. When he finds out, he'll react. Let him. I'm not afraid of him. You should be. He killed your father, Vivienne, slowly and carefully. A man like that won't hesitate to come after you, too. Then it's good I have a husband who promises to protect me. Something flickered in Dante's eyes. Heat, Appreciation. Is that what I am? Your husband? Legally, yes. In every other sense? I paused. I don't know yet. Fair enough. He closed the remaining distance between us, his hand lifting to cut my face. Can I kiss you? Properly this time. Not for show or tradition, just because I want to. My heart hammered. This was the moment where I decided if this marriage would stay a business arrangement or become something else. Yes. His mouth met mine with more intensity than at the church. More honestly, his other hand slid into my hair, tilting my head to deepen the kiss. I made a sound I didn't recognize, my hands gripping his jacket to steady myself. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against mine. I need you to understand something. What? I meant my vows, all of them, but especially the one about being worth the effort. His thumb brushed my cheek. I'm going to make mistakes, going to have days where the darkness wins, but I'll never stop trying to be the man you deserve. What if I don't know what I deserve? Then we'll figure it out together. He kissed me again, softer this time, a promise instead of a question. And standing there surrounded by his mother's flowers, I felt something shift inside me, felt the walls I'd built start to crack. Take me home, I whispered. Show me our room, our life, whatever this becomes. The master bedroom was nothing like the guest room Dante had shown me days ago. This was clearly his space. Dark woods, rich fabrics, a massive bed that dominated the room, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate grounds. This is where you sleep? Where I've slept alone for 8 years. But if you're comfortable, he paused. We could share it. Rosa expects us to. And honestly, I'd like you close. Not for... He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly less composed. Not for anything you're not ready for. Just to have you near. I walked to the window, looked out at gardens bathed in moonlight. Behind me, I heard Dante move around the room, heard his jacket being removed, the soft sound of shoes on hardwood. There's a bathroom through that door. Your things from the apartment will be brought tomorrow. Tonight, you can use whatever you need from my closet. I turned to find him standing by the bed, shirt partially unbuttoned, looking more uncertain than I'd ever seen him. Dante? Yes? Stop being so careful with me. I'm not going to break. You might, and I'd never forgive myself. I crossed the room, stood in front of him, close enough to touch. I agreed to marry you, agreed to build a life together. That means you don't have to treat me like glass. What should I treat you like? Your wife, your partner, someone strong enough to handle whatever this becomes. His hand lifted, traced the line of my jaw. You are all of those things, but you're also someone grieving her father, someone thrust into a world she didn't choose. I won't rush you into intimacy you might regret. And if I don't want to wait? The words surprised us both, but standing there in his bedroom, wearing his ring, feeling the heat of his gaze, I realized I meant them. Dante's eyes darkened. Vivienne? I'm not saying forever happens tonight, but maybe we start. Maybe we see what this could be, instead of just what we think it should be. He studied my face for a long moment. Then slowly, he leaned down and kissed me. Different from the greenhouse, this kiss held intent, promise, the beginning of something neither of us could fully control. His hands found the zipper of my dress, paused, asking permission. I nodded. The dress slipped off my shoulders, pulled at my feet. I stood there in silk and lace, feeling exposed and powerful at once. Dante's gaze traveled over me with appreciation that felt genuine rather than calculated. You're beautiful, more than I imagined. You imagined this? Every night since I met you. He pulled me close, and the feel of his body against mine sent electricity through my nervous system. But the reality is better. We moved to the bed with fumbling urgency. His shirt disappeared, then his pants. barriers falling away until there was just skin and breath and the weight of what we were choosing. "We can stop," he murmured against my neck. "Anytime. Just say the word." But I didn't want to stop. Didn't want to think about obligations or contracts or the complicated reasons we'd ended up here. Just wanted to feel something other than grief and fear and uncertainty. "Don't stop." So he didn't. Later, I lay wrapped in expensive sheets with Dante's arm around me, listening to his breathing even out into sleep. The room was dark except for moonlight streaming through the windows. Peaceful, safe. I should have felt guilty, should have analyzed what we'd just done, should have worried about complications and emotions and all the ways this could end badly. Instead, I felt calm, settled in a way I hadn't since my father died. Dante stirred beside me, his arm tightening around my waist. "You okay?" "Yes. You?" "Better than okay." He pressed a kiss to my shoulder. "Thank you." "For what?" "For choosing this. For choosing us, even when you had every reason not to." I turned in his arms, studied his face in the moonlight, the sharp features softened by proximity, the scar through his eyebrow that I traced with my fingers, the man who was both dangerous and careful, violent and gentle, criminal and something more. "I didn't choose you because I had no other options." "No?" "I chose you because when I'm with you, I feel less alone, like maybe the grief and the anger and the fear aren't things I have to carry by myself anymore." His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheek. "You'll never carry anything alone again. That's what this means, what we are now." "What are we?" "Partners, allies, husband and wife." He smiled slightly. "And maybe, eventually, something more." "Like what?" "Like two people who found each other in darkness and decided to build something that matters." I kissed him then, slow and deep and full of promise. And when we finally broke apart, I rested my head on his chest and let his heartbeat lull me toward sleep. Tomorrow would bring complications, Jonathan Pierce, the estate battle, the reality of navigating Dante's world. But tonight, wrapped in my husband's arms, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows and the smell of coffee. Dante's side of the bed was empty but still warm. I sat up, pulling the sheet around myself, taking in the room in daylight. Even more beautiful than I'd realized. Art on the walls that looked original, books on shelves suggesting Dante read more than business reports. A photograph on the dresser of a young woman who must have been his mother. "You're awake." I turned to find Dante standing in the doorway, wearing dark pants and nothing else, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "I was hoping to bring this to you in bed. Very domestic husband behavior." "You made coffee?" "Don't sound so surprised. I have many hidden talents." He crossed the room, handed me a mug, sat on the edge of the bed. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected." "Good, because we have a busy day ahead." His expression shifted, became more serious. "I have a meeting this morning, business that can't be postponed. You'll have the house to yourself for a few hours. Isabella will stop by around noon to help with moving your things." "What kind of business?" "The kind I'm trying to phase out, but some obligations can't be ignored without consequences." He touched my face gently. "I'll tell you about it when I return. No more secrets, remember?" "I remember." He leaned in, kissed me softly. "There's food in the kitchen. The security system is armed, but will recognize you now. And Vivienne?" "Yes?" "Don't leave the estate without calling me first, just until we've made our marriage public, until everyone knows you're protected." "You think Jonathan will come after me?" "I think he's dangerous and unpredictable, and I'd rather be overcautious than sorry." Another kiss, this one lingering. "I'll be back by 2. We can have lunch, talk about next steps." He left before I could respond, and I heard him moving around the house. Shower running, drawers opening and closing, then footsteps on stairs, a car engine starting. Then silence. I finished my coffee, wrapped myself in Dante's robe, which was ridiculously too large, and explored the house properly. The library called to me first. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, a rolling ladder, comfortable chairs near windows that overlooked the gardens. I pulled down a book at random. Poetry, Dante Alighieri, appropriately enough. The pages were worn, suggesting it had been read multiple times. Finding anything interesting? I spun around to find a woman standing in the doorway. Older, maybe 60, wearing an apron and carrying cleaning supplies. "I'm sorry, I didn't know anyone else was here." "Maria, I manage the house. Come 3 times a week." She smiled warmly. "You must be the new Mrs. Moretti. Welcome. Mr. Dante said you'd be here. Please call me Vivienne. Mrs. Moretti suits you better, gives you authority. The staff needs to know you're in charge, too." She set down her supplies. "I made breakfast, left it warming in the kitchen. You need to eat. Mr. Dante worries when people don't eat properly." "He worries?" "More than he shows, always has, even as a boy." She moved around the library, dusting shelves with practiced efficiency. His mother used to say he felt too much, tried to fix everything, carry everyone's burdens. I thought about Dante's hands on my face, his voice promising I'd never be alone. He still does that. Yes, which is why he needs someone strong beside him, someone who won't let him shoulder everything alone. Maria paused, looked at me directly. "Are you that person, Mrs. Moretti?" "I don't know yet, but I'm trying to be." She nodded, satisfied. "That's good enough for now. Come, eat breakfast, then I'll show you around properly. This is your home now. You should know every corner of it." I followed her through the house, learning the layout. The formal dining room we'd never use, the casual one we would, the office where Dante worked, the gym in the basement, the wine cellar that could double as a panic room. Panic room? Security measure. Mr. Dante is careful about threats. The door is reinforced steel. Supplies inside to last a week. Communication equipment, weapons if necessary. Maria said this casually, like discussing weather. Hopefully you'll never need it, but knowing it's there provides peace of mind. The reality of Dante's world crashed over me again. This house wasn't just elegant, it was a fortress, beautiful and dangerous at once. My phone buzzed. Text from Tyler. "You alive? Need proof of life." I smiled, texted back. "Alive, married, adjusting." "That's not proof. Video call me." I sighed, found a quiet corner, called him on video. Tyler's face appeared, looking worried. "There she is, still breathing. Good sign." "Did you think I wouldn't be? I spent all night imagining worst-case scenarios. You married to a criminal, alone in his house, no witnesses." "Tyler, I'm fine. The house is beautiful. Dante's been—" I paused. "He's been good to me." My brother studied my face through the screen. "You slept with him? That's none of your business." "That's a yes. Vivienne, don't judge me or analyze this. It's complicated enough without you adding commentary." Tyler was quiet for a moment, then softer. "I just want you to be safe and happy, in that order." "I know, and I am, both of those things, more or less." We talked for a few more minutes before Tyler had to leave for class. After we hung up, I stood in the hallway looking at artwork that probably cost more than my medical school education, wondering how my life had transformed so completely in 3 weeks. The doorbell rang. I heard Maria answer it, heard Isabella's voice bright and cheerful. "Where's my new sister-in-law? I brought reinforcements for moving day." I went downstairs to find Isabella with 2 other women, all carrying coffee and bags from an expensive bakery. "Vivienne, perfect. We're here to help move your things and also gossip about my brother." She kissed my cheeks. "This is my cousin Gabriella, and this is Sophia, who works with Dante. We're your welcome committee." The next hours passed in a blur of activity. We drove to my apartment in Isabella's car, a sporty thing that probably violated several traffic laws, packed my belongings, gossiped about family, laughed about wedding disasters. It felt normal, like having friends, like maybe being part of Dante's family wouldn't be all darkness and danger. We returned to the estate around 1:30, found Dante's car already in the driveway. "He's early, must have been eager to see you," Isabella winked. "Come on, let's get you unpacked before he monopolizes all your time." But when we walked into the house, Dante was standing in the foyer with an expression I hadn't seen before. Pure rage. "Vivienne, my office, now." Isabella's smile faltered. "Dante, what's wrong?" Jonathan Pierce just went on the news, made a statement about Victor Ashford's suspicious death and his concern for the deceased's daughter who's gone missing. His dark eyes found mine. "He's claiming you were kidnapped." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Worse, he's offering a reward for information about your whereabouts, and he's implying the Moretti family is responsible." Dante's jaw clenched. "Which means our marriage just became very public and very complicated." Chapter 5. Dante's office was exactly what I'd expected. Dark wood, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate. But what I hadn't expected were the multiple screens mounted on one wall, currently showing news coverage of Jonathan Pierce standing outside my father's office building. "Turn it up," Dante said to someone I hadn't noticed, a man in his 30s with sharp eyes and an earpiece. Jonathan's voice filled the room. Deeply concerned about Vivienne Ashford's welfare, she hasn't been seen since her father's funeral 3 weeks ago. Given the suspicious circumstances surrounding Victor's death and certain criminal elements known to have had business dealings with the Ashford family, we must consider that she may be in danger, or worse. Criminal elements? I felt sick. He's accusing you without saying your name. He doesn't need to say it. Everyone knows exactly who he means. Dante's voice was cold, controlled, but I could see the fury beneath. "Marco, what else do we know?" The man with the earpiece, Marco, pulled up information on a tablet. "Pierce filed a missing persons report this morning, claims he's been trying to reach Miss Ashford for days with no response. He's also petitioned the court to appoint him temporary administrator of the Ashford estate, citing her disappearance as evidence she's unable to manage her father's affairs." Of course he did. I moved closer to the screens, watching Jonathan's performance. He looked concerned, devastated even, the perfect image of a family friend worried about a vulnerable young woman. He's trying to steal everything while painting himself as the hero. And painting us as the villains. Dante turned to Isabella, who'd followed us into the office along with Gabriella and Sophia. "Get me Anthony Romano. Tell him we need legal counsel immediately. And contact Father Michael. We'll need documentation of the marriage." Already on it, Isabella was typing rapidly on her phone. "But Dante, if we produce a marriage certificate now, it looks like I married her to control her assets. I know." He ran a hand through his hair, the first sign of agitation I'd seen. "But the alternative is letting Pierce's narrative stand, letting people believe Vivienne is missing or dead. We need to get ahead of this." "How?" I asked. "If we announce the marriage, Jonathan will claim you coerced me, that it's not legitimate. He'll use it to prove his point about criminal elements. Then we don't just announce it, we show the world you're here by choice." Dante turned to face me fully. "We hold a press conference. You tell your story. Explain that you're safe, married, and that Pierce's concern is really about stealing your father's company." "A press conference? Dante, I've never." "You're a doctor. You've presented at medical conferences. You know how to speak publicly." "That's different. That's medicine. This is," I gestured at the screens showing Jonathan's face, "this is warfare." "Yes, it is." He crossed to me, took both my hands. "And I'm sorry you're caught in it, but we need to respond, now, before Pierce's version becomes the only version people hear." I looked at our joined hands. at the gold band on my finger that I'd worn less than 24 hours, at the screens showing a man who'd murdered my father now playing the concerned family friend. What would I say? The truth, that your father made arrangements before he died, that you chose to honor them, that you married me of your own free will, and you're exactly where you want to be. His thumbs brushed across my knuckles. Can you do that? Could I? Stand in front of cameras and reporters and claim I'd married Dante Moretti willingly? Defend a marriage that had started as a debt payment but had become something more complicated? I thought about last night, about Dante's hands on my skin, his voice promising I'd never be alone, the way he looked at me like I mattered. Yes, I can do that. Relief flickered across his face. Marco, set it up, this afternoon as possible, here at the estate, and get me everything we have on Pierce's connection to the Calabresi family. If we're going public, we're going all in. The next 2 hours were chaos, lawyers arriving with documents, Isabella helping me choose appropriate clothing, professional but not intimidated, Sophia coaching me on handling difficult questions, Dante on multiple phone calls, his voice sharp and commanding. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection. The woman looking back wore an elegant navy dress and pearl earrings borrowed from Isabella. Her hair was styled, makeup subtle but polished. She looked put together, confident. Nothing like the terrified woman who'd stood in a lawyer's office 2 weeks ago, learning about her father's debts. You look perfect. I turned to find Dante in the doorway, now wearing a suit that probably cost more than my first car. He'd transformed back into the controlled, dangerous man I'd met at the funeral. But when he looked at me, I saw something softer underneath. I'm terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He crossed the room, adjusted one of my earrings with gentle fingers. But Vivienne, you need to understand something before we do this. What? Once we go public, there's no going back. You'll be Mrs. Dante Moretti, my wife, part of my family. People will judge you for that, hate you for it. There will be threats, attacks. Your medical career will be complicated by the association. Are you trying to talk me out of this? I'm trying to make sure you understand the cost. I thought about my father, about the deal he'd made to protect me, about Jonathan Pierce standing on television, claiming concern while plotting to steal everything my family had built. I understand, and I'm doing it anyway. He studied my face for a long moment. Then he leaned in, kissed me softly. Not passion, just connection, support. Then let's go show the world who you really are. The press conference was set up in the estate's formal living room. Cameras, reporters from major networks, print journalists with recorders, all crammed into a space that suddenly felt too small. Dante and I sat behind a table, his hand resting on mine in full view of everyone, a gesture of unity, of possession maybe, but also comfort. His lawyer, Anthony Romano, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, stood to one side, ready to intervene if questions crossed legal lines. Thank you all for coming on short notice. Dante's voice carried authority, confidence. I'll make a brief statement, then Mrs. Moretti will speak, then we'll take limited questions. Mrs. Moretti. Hearing him say it in front of cameras made it real in a way even the ceremony hadn't. 3 weeks ago, Victor Ashford passed away suddenly. His death was ruled a heart attack, but there are questions about the circumstances that have not been adequately investigated. What is not in question is that Victor was a brilliant businessman who made arrangements before his death to protect his daughter and his legacy. Dante squeezed my hand. One of those arrangements was a marriage alliance between the Ashford and Moretti families. Vivienne and I were married yesterday in a private ceremony. She is here by choice, safe and well, and any suggestion otherwise is a deliberate lie designed to obscure the real threat to the Ashford estate. Murmurs rippled through the reporters, cameras flashed. I felt the weight of dozens of eyes, all assessing, judging, questioning. That threat comes from Jonathan Pierce, who has spent the past 3 weeks attempting to seize control of Ashford Investments through legal manipulation and public deception. We have evidence that Mr. Pierce was involved in financial crimes that Victor Ashford discovered before his death. Evidence that suggests Victor's heart attack was not as natural as initial reports claimed. The murmurs grew louder. Anthony stepped forward slightly, a reminder that Dante was approaching dangerous territory. But rather than let me speak further, I'll let my wife tell you her own story. He turned to me. Every camera in the room swiveled. I felt my pulse hammering, my hands going cold despite Dante's warmth beside me. I cleared my throat, looked directly at the cameras. My name is Vivienne Ashford Moretti. 3 weeks ago, my father died suddenly. I've spent the time since learning that the life I thought he lived was more complicated than I knew, that he'd made arrangements I didn't understand, that people I trusted were not who they seemed. My voice was shaking. I steadied it, thought about my father, about the deal he'd made because he believed it would protect me. My father entered into a business arrangement with the Moretti family 6 months before his death. That arrangement included provisions for my protection and for the preservation of his company's integrity. When he died, I had a choice: honor the agreements he made or walk away and let everything he built be destroyed by people like Jonathan Pierce. I looked at Dante, let the cameras catch it. I chose to honor my father's wishes. I married Dante Moretti because it was the right decision for my father's legacy and for my own future. This is not a kidnapping. This is not coercion. This is a woman making informed choices about her life. A reporter's hand shot up. Anthony nodded. Mrs. Moretti, are you saying Jonathan Pierce poses a threat to you? I'm saying that Mr. Pierce has demonstrated a pattern of deception. He's attempted to freeze my father's estate, claimed incompetence that doesn't exist, and now he's making public statements designed to paint himself as a hero while stealing a company that doesn't belong to him. But the Moretti family is known to have connections to organized crime. The Moretti family has legitimate business interests across multiple industries. Dante's voice was steel. Any suggestion otherwise is speculation, not fact. And what we're discussing today is Jonathan Pierce's credibility, not mine. Another reporter jumped in. Mrs. Moretti, you're a cardiac surgeon. Does your husband's alleged criminal connections concern you? I felt Dante tense beside me, but I kept my voice steady. My husband has been nothing but honest with me about his family's history and their business operations, more honest than men like Jonathan Pierce, who wear respectability like a mask while committing actual crimes. What crimes specifically? Anthony stepped forward. We're not prepared to detail ongoing investigations, but we've provided law enforcement with evidence of financial misconduct involving Mr. Pierce and his associates. The truth will come out through proper channels. The questions continued for another 15 minutes, some hostile, some genuinely curious, all of them trying to find cracks in our story, weaknesses to exploit. But Dante and I held firm, united front, married couple defending each other against baseless accusations. Finally, Anthony called time. That's all for today. Thank you for coming. Any further statements will be released through our legal team. The reporters filed out, still shouting questions. Camera crews packed up equipment. Within minutes, the room was empty except for Dante, Anthony, Marco, and myself. I sagged back in my chair, adrenaline draining away. You did beautifully. Isabella appeared from somewhere, pressing a glass of water into my hands. Confident, controlled, like you'd been doing press conferences your entire life. I feel like I'm going to be sick. That's normal. Dante's hand found the back of my neck, thumb rubbing soothing circles. The hard part's done. Now we wait for Pierce's response. He'll respond. Definitely. And when he does, we'll be ready. Jonathan's response came 3 hours later. We were in Dante's office eating dinner that Maria had brought in, watching news coverage of our press conference. Most networks were running with the story. Opinions were divided. Some thought it was romantic, others suspicious, most just confused. Then Jonathan Pierce's face appeared on screen. Another press conference, this one outside a police station. I've just filed a formal complaint against Dante Moretti and his associates. Ms. Ashford, and I refuse to use any other name, is clearly under duress. The marriage she claims to have entered willingly shows signs of coercion. I've asked law enforcement to investigate whether she's being held against her will. Dante's jaw clenched. He's not backing down. More than that, Marco was typing rapidly, pulling up information. He's filed for a restraining order, claims you're a danger to Vivienne, and requesting that she be removed from the estate for her own protection. Can he do that? I asked. He can try. Anthony was already on his phone. But we have documentation, marriage certificate, your statement on camera, evidence of your free will. No judge will grant it. But 3 hours later, we learned that one had. A judge I'd never heard of, Michael Brennan, 60 years old, 20 years on the bench, had granted a temporary restraining order. Dante was required to stay 50 feet away from me, pending a hearing in 3 days. This is insane. I stared at the court documents. I'm his wife. We live together. How can a judge order him to stay away from me? Because Brennan is in Pierce's pocket. Dante's voice was ice. Has been for years. This is a power play. Pierce knows if he can separate us, make us appear unstable, he can challenge the marriage's legitimacy. So what do we do? You stay here. I'll stay at my department in the city. He stood, started gathering files. Isabella will move in. You won't be alone, and we'll fight this in court. Dante, this is ridiculous. It's warfare, and Pierce just made the first move. He crossed to me, took my face in his hands, despite Anthony clearing his throat in warning. 3 days. We'll get this thrown out in 3 days. But until then, we follow the order. Give Pierce no ammunition to claim we're in contempt. I don't want you to leave. The words surprised me as much as him, but standing there facing the possibility of separation, I realized how much I'd come to depend on his presence, his protection, his partnership. I don't want to leave either. His forehead rested against mine, but we're playing a long game. Pierce is getting desperate. Desperate men make mistakes. We just need to be patient. I'm not good at patience. Neither am I. He kissed me, soft and lingering. But for you, I'll try. He left an hour later with a bag hastily packed. Isabella arrived 30 minutes after that with her own luggage and 3 bottles of wine. House arrest isn't so bad when you have good wine and better company. She poured 2 generous glasses, handed me one. Come on, let's sit in the library and plot Jonathan Pierce's downfall like proper mob wives. Despite everything, I smiled. Is that what we are? Mob wives? Technically, you're mob royalty, married to the boss, which makes me, what, mob princess? She settled into a leather chair, kicked off her shoes. Though I prefer to think of us as women navigating impossible situations with grace and occasional violence. Has there been violence in your life? Some. Mostly when I was younger and men thought my brother's protection meant they could get away with anything. Her expression hardened briefly. They learned otherwise. Turns out the Moretti family protects its women fiercely. Tell me about your childhood, about growing up in this world. For the next 2 hours, Isabella talked. About her mother's death and the darkness that followed. About Dante stepping up at 16 to raise her. About the careful balance between legitimate business and the other kind. About watching her brother transform from a boy who loved poetry into a man who had to make impossible choices. He's trying so hard to be different, to build something our mother would be proud of. Isabella refilled our glasses. But change is slow, and there are people invested in keeping things the way they've always been. Like who? The Calabrese family, for one. They profit from chaos, from the old ways. Dante's push for legitimacy threatens their operations. She studied me over her wine glass. Which is why your marriage matters. An alliance with the Ashford name, respected, legitimate, connected, gives him credibility he's never had. So I'm a tool, a means to an end. No, you're a partner. There's a difference. Isabella leaned forward. I've never seen my brother look at anyone the way he looks at you. With my mother, he had duty. With our father, he had fear. With business associates, he has strategy. But with you, she smiled, with you, he has hope. Before I could respond, Marco appeared in the doorway. Mrs. Moretti, we have a situation. There's a car outside the gates, been there for 20 minutes. Driver won't identify himself. My stomach dropped. Pierce? Unknown, but Mr. Moretti wants you in the panic room until we verify it's not a threat. Isabella was already on her feet, pulling me up. Come on, better safe than sorry. The panic room was exactly where Maria had shown me, behind the wine cellar. Steel-reinforced door, interior that looked like a luxurious apartment, communication equipment, security monitors showing every angle of the estate. Marco sealed us inside. I'll update you in 10 minutes. Don't open this door for anyone but me or Mr. Moretti. Then we were alone. Isabella on the phone with someone, speaking rapid Italian. Me staring at security feeds showing armed men moving through the estate grounds, converging on the mysterious car. Who are they? I asked. The men with guns? Our security, all former military or law enforcement, all loyal to Dante. Isabella joined me at the monitors. There, that's Carlo approaching the vehicle. On screen, a massive man approached the car, weapon visible but not raised. The driver's window rolled down. Words were exchanged. Then Carlo stepped back, lowered his weapon, pulled out his phone. Stand down, Marco's voice came through speakers. It's Mr. Tyler Ashford, Mrs. Moretti's brother. Relief and confusion flooded through me. Tyler? What's he doing here? Let's find out. Isabella unsealed the door, and we headed back upstairs. Tyler was in the foyer, looking pale and shaken, surrounded by armed men who were professionally apologetic about nearly shooting him. Vivienne, thank God. He crossed the room, pulled me into a hug. I've been trying to call you for hours. Your phone keeps going to voicemail. Because it died and I forgot to charge it. Tyler, what are you doing here? Saving you from making the biggest mistake of your life. He pulled back, looked at Isabella and the security personnel. Can we talk, privately? I led him to the library, Isabella following, despite his pointed look. She shrugged. You're in my brother's house. I go where I want. Tyler sighed, ran a hand through his hair. I saw the news, saw Jonathan Pierce claiming you're being held against your will, and I thought, he paused, I thought maybe he was right. Tyler, I told you, I'm here by choice. You said that, but you also said this was a business arrangement, and now you're all over the news defending a man you barely know, claiming a marriage that happened in secret, caught in a war between your husband and your father's business partner. He gripped my shoulders. Vivienne, this is insane. Come home. Come back to New York with me. We'll figure something else out. There is nothing else. If I leave, Jonathan wins. He steals Dad's company, gets away with murder, and I lose everything. But if you stay, what do you lose? Tyler's voice cracked. Your reputation? Your medical career? Your safety? Vivienne, these are dangerous people. This world is... I know what this world is. And yes, it's dangerous. But Dante has been honest with me. He's protected me. He's given me choices that men like Jonathan Pierce never would. He's given you the illusion of choice. That's what men like him do. They make you think you're free while building a cage around you. Tyler, no. Listen to me. Dad made a deal to protect you, but he didn't understand what he was trading. You for his debts? That's not protection. That's selling his daughter. The words hit harder than they should have, because part of me agreed. Part of me still felt like a chess piece moved around by men making decisions about my life. But another part, The part that had woken in Dante's arms, that had stood beside him against Jonathan Pierce, that had felt genuinely safe for the first time in weeks, that part knew Tyler was wrong. Dad didn't sell me. He gave me options when I would have had none. And I chose this, chose Dante, chose to fight for Dad's legacy instead of running away. By marrying a criminal? By marrying a man who's trying to be better than what he inherited, who's been more honest with me in 3 weeks than most people are in years, who sees me as a partner, not a possession. Tyler stared at me like I was a stranger. You're in love with him. Was I? I'd slept with Dante, defended him, felt his absence like a physical ache when he left. But love? I don't know, maybe. But even if I'm not, I'm committed to this, to him, to what we're building. Even if it destroys you, even if it changes me into someone I didn't expect to be. My brother was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, I can't watch you do this. Can't stand by while you throw away everything for a man you barely know. Then don't. Go back to New York, finish school. Let me handle my own life. Vivienne, Tyler, I love you. You're my only family. But I'm making my own choices now, and you have to respect that. He looked like he wanted to argue, to drag me out of this house by force if necessary. But something in my expression must have convinced him that I meant it. Fine, I'll go. But when this falls apart, and it will fall apart, call me. I'll come get you, no questions asked. It won't fall apart. You don't know that. No, but I'm choosing to believe it anyway. He left without another word. I watched from the window as his car pulled through the gates, disappearing into the darkness beyond. Isabella's hand settled on my shoulder. You okay? No, but I will be. He loves you. That's why he's fighting this. I know, but sometimes love means letting go, letting someone make their own mistakes. You don't think this is a mistake? I thought about Dante, the hands on my face, his voice promising I'd never be alone, the way he'd looked at me like I was worth protecting. I think it's the only choice that felt right, and maybe that's enough. My phone buzzed. A text from Dante. Heard Tyler was there? You okay? I typed back. Fine. He's gone. I'm safe. Good. 2 more days. Then I'm coming home. Home. Like I belonged here. Like this was where I was meant to be. I looked at Isabella. At the library full of books Dante's mother had collected. At the life I was choosing instead of running from. 2 more days, I said out loud. Then we finish this. Chapter 6. The hearing was scheduled for 10 o'clock Thursday morning. I spent Wednesday night barely sleeping, running through potential questions, imagining scenarios where everything fell apart. Isabella had stayed with me both nights, turning what could have been lonely isolation into something almost like friendship. We'd talked until late about her art gallery in the North End, about my years in medical school, about the strange reality of being women in a world run by dangerous men. The trick, she'd said over midnight wine, is remembering that we're not powerless. We just operate differently. While the men are busy measuring territory and throwing punches, we're building networks, creating alliances, wielding influence they don't even see until it's too late. Now, standing in front of the mirror Thursday morning in a navy suit that screamed professional competence, I tried to channel that confidence, tried to believe I could walk into a courtroom and convince a judge that my marriage was legitimate, that I wasn't some victim who needed rescuing. You look perfect. Isabella appeared behind me, adjusting the collar of my blouse. Serious, capable, like a woman who makes her own decisions. What if the judge doesn't see it that way? Then we appeal. But Vivienne? She met my eyes in the mirror. Brennan might be in Pierce's pocket, but he's also a political creature. Our press conference got attention. Public opinion is shifting. If he rules against you, he has to justify it. And justification gets messy when there's a legitimate marriage certificate and testimony from a willing bride. My phone buzzed. Dante, from his apartment in the city. Anthony will meet you at the courthouse. I'll be there, but we can't acknowledge each other because of the restraining order. Just remember, you're not alone in this. I texted back, "I know. See you soon." The drive to the courthouse took 40 minutes. Marco drove, 2 other security personnel following in a second vehicle. Precautions that Dante had insisted on. Protection against whatever Jonathan Pierce might try. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, all shouting questions the moment our car appeared. Marco and his team formed a barrier, guiding me through the chaos while camera flashes went off like lightning. "Mrs. Moretti, are you being forced to appear today? Do you fear for your safety? Has your husband threatened you?" I kept my head up, eyes forward, refusing to engage. Inside the courthouse was marginally quieter, though still full of curious onlookers and legal professionals who'd clearly heard about the case. Anthony Romano waited near courtroom 6, looking every inch the expensive lawyer in his tailored suit. With him was a woman I didn't recognize, late 40s, sharp-eyed, carrying a briefcase that suggested serious business. "Vivienne, this is Elizabeth Chen, forensic accountant. She's been reviewing your father's financial records and Pierce's activities." Elizabeth shook my hand with a grip that suggested she crushed resistance for a living. "Mrs. Moretti, we found some very interesting patterns in Pierce's transactions. Should make for compelling testimony if the judge allows it." "Will he?" "That depends on whether Brennan wants the truth or just wants this to go away quietly." Anthony gestured toward the courtroom doors. "Either way, we're prepared. Just answer honestly, stay calm, and trust that we've got your back." We entered courtroom 6. It was smaller than I'd expected from television. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, a judge's bench that seemed to loom over everything. The gallery was half full, reporters, curiosity seekers, and in the back corner, Dante. Our eyes met across the room. He looked as controlled and dangerous as ever in a dark suit, but I saw the tension in his jaw, the concern in his eyes, the way his hands gripped the armrest like he was physically restraining himself from crossing the space between us. Jonathan Pierce sat at the plaintiff's table with his own lawyer, a woman who looked like she specialized in making reasonable things sound sinister. When Jonathan saw me, his expression shifted into concern, so practiced it must have been rehearsed. The act of a man who'd poisoned my father and was now trying to steal everything he'd built. All rise for the Honorable Judge Michael Brennan. Everyone stood as the judge entered, 60 years old, gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses. He looked like someone's kindly grandfather, which made sense. The best villains always wore pleasant masks. "Be seated. We're here today regarding a temporary restraining order filed by Jonathan Pierce on behalf of Vivienne Ashford." Brennan looked at me over his glasses. "Though I understand you now go by Vivienne Moretti?" "Yes, Your Honor. I was married this past Saturday." "To Dante Moretti, who is present in this courtroom despite the restraining order requiring him to stay 50 feet away from you." Anthony stood smoothly. "Your Honor, my client is present for legal proceedings regarding his marriage. He has not approached Mrs. Moretti and has no intention of violating your order. However, he has every right to be present for a hearing that directly affects his marriage." Brennan's lips thinned. "Very well. Mr. Pierce, your attorney may present your case." Pierce's lawyer, her nameplate read Sarah Whitmore, stood with the fluid grace of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Your Honor, my client has known Vivienne Ashford since she was a child. He watched her grow up, supported her education, considered her family. When Victor Ashford died 3 weeks ago, Mr. Pierce naturally became concerned for Vivienne's welfare. That concern deepened when she disappeared immediately following the funeral." "I didn't disappear," I said sharply. "I was grieving." Brennan's gavel came down. "Mrs. Moretti, you'll have your chance to speak. Right now, Miss Whitmore has the floor." Sarah continued as if I hadn't interrupted. Mr. Pierce's concern transformed into alarm when he discovered that Miss Ashford, as she was then, had been seen in the company of known criminal Dante Moretti. a man whose family has been investigated multiple times for racketeering, money laundering, and violent crimes. Alleged crimes, Anthony interjected. Never charged, never convicted. My client runs legitimate businesses and has no criminal record. The absence of conviction doesn't mean absence of crime, Your Honor. It means skilled lawyers and intimidated witnesses. Sarah pulled out documents from her briefcase. What we know for certain is that Victor Ashford had business dealings with the Moretti organization, dealings that placed him, and by extension his daughter, in danger. We believe that shortly before his death, Victor Ashford was attempting to extract himself from those dealings, and we believe his sudden death was extremely convenient for the people who'd loaned him money. The implication hung in the air like smoke. She was suggesting Dante had killed my father. I felt rage rising, hot and sharp, started to stand, but Anthony's hand on my arm stopped me. Let her finish, he whispered, then we destroy her. Sarah was still talking. Within days of Victor's death, Vivienne Ashford vanished. The next time she appeared publicly was at a press conference claiming to be married to Dante Moretti, a marriage that allegedly occurred in a private ceremony with no public notice, a marriage that conveniently gives Mr. Moretti control over the Ashford estate. I don't have control, I started, but Brennan's gavel cut me off again. Mrs. Moretti, one more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt. Sarah smiled like she'd scored a point. Your Honor, we're asking that you extend the restraining order and require Mrs. Moretti to undergo a psychiatric evaluation to determine if she's capable of making informed decisions. Additionally, we're requesting that the Ashford estate be placed in temporary receivership under Mr. Pierce's management until these matters are resolved. And there it was, the real goal. Pierce didn't care about my welfare. He wanted control of the company, wanted to bury the evidence of his crimes while stealing everything my father had built. Mr. Romano, your response? Anthony stood, and even in his stillness there was power. Your Honor, this entire proceeding is a farce. Mr. Pierce isn't concerned about Mrs. Moretti's welfare. He's concerned about his own criminal exposure. My client has documentation proving that Jonathan Pierce has been laundering money for the Calabrese crime family through Ashford Investments for at least 3 years. When Victor Ashford discovered this, he threatened to expose it. Shortly afterward, he died of a heart attack that was never properly investigated. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Pierce's face went white, then red. That's a lie, he started, but his lawyer grabbed his arm. Your Honor, these are baseless accusations. Baseless? Anthony pulled out his own documents. We have bank records, wire transfers, communications between Mr. Pierce and known Calabrese associates. We have evidence that Victor Ashford was gathering documentation before his death. And we have testimony from Mrs. Moretti that her father specifically made arrangements with the Moretti family for her protection from Pierce and his associates. Brennan leaned forward. You're suggesting Mr. Pierce murdered Victor Ashford? I'm suggesting the circumstances warrant investigation. I'm suggesting that Mr. Pierce's sudden concern for Mrs. Moretti's welfare is actually concern about what she knows and what evidence she might possess. And I'm suggesting that this restraining order is nothing more than an attempt to separate her from the one person who can protect her from the people who killed her father. The courtroom erupted, reporters typing frantically, Pierce shouting denials, Sarah Whitmore trying to regain control. Brennan's gavel came down repeatedly. Order! I will have order in this court. When silence finally fell, the judge looked exhausted, and maybe, just maybe, less certain of his position. Mr. Romano, these are serious allegations. Do you have proof to back them up? I have enough to warrant a criminal investigation, Your Honor, which is why we've already provided copies of all documentation to the district attorney's office. But more relevantly, I have proof that Mrs. Moretti's marriage is legitimate and voluntary. He gestured to me. "Your Honor, I'd like to call Vivienne Moretti to testify." The witness stand felt both exposed and protected at once. Every eye in the courtroom focused on me, including Dante's dark gaze from the back, steady and sure. Anthony approached with the careful steps of someone navigating a minefield. "Mrs. Moretti, can you explain the circumstances of your marriage?" I took a breath. 3 weeks ago, my father died suddenly. In settling his estate, I learned that he'd accumulated significant debts with the Moretti family. He'd also made arrangements before his death, arrangements that included a potential marriage alliance to ensure my protection and the preservation of his company's integrity. "And you agreed to this marriage?" "Not immediately. I struggled with it. I barely knew Dante Moretti. The idea of marrying someone to settle a debt felt archaic, wrong." I looked at Dante. But as I learned more about the threats against my father, about Jonathan Pierce's criminal activities, about the danger I was in, I realized my father had made this arrangement because it was the only way to keep me safe. "Did Mr. Moretti coerce you?" "No. He gave me every opportunity to walk away, told me I had choices, never pressured me into anything I wasn't ready for." "And are you afraid of your husband?" "No." "Does he control your movements, your decisions, your access to money or communication?" "No. I have my own phone, my own accounts, my own freedom. The only reason I'm isolated right now is because of this restraining order, which was filed by Jonathan Pierce, not requested by me." Anthony nodded, then pulled out a document. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit the marriage certificate, signed by both parties, witnessed by Isabella Moretti and Tyler Ashford, Mrs. Moretti's own brother, and officially registered with the state. This is a legal marriage by any standard." He handed the certificate to the clerk, then turned back to me. "Mrs. Moretti, do you wish to remain married to Dante Moretti?" "Yes." "Do you feel you're in danger from him?" "No. The only danger I feel is from the man who murdered my father and is now trying to steal his company." Pierce shot to his feet. "Your Honor, I object to these continued accusations." "Sit down, Mr. Pierce." Brennan's voice was sharp. He looked at Anthony. "Do you have questions for your client, or are you just making speeches?" "Just a few more questions, Your Honor." Anthony moved closer to the stand. "Mrs. Moretti, are you aware that your marriage gives your husband potential access to the Ashford estate?" "I'm aware. I'm also aware that Dante has his own wealth and his own businesses. He doesn't need my inheritance. What he needs is exactly what my father offered, a legitimate alliance that benefits both families." "And you're comfortable with that?" "I'm comfortable with marrying someone who's been honest about his intentions, someone who's protected me, someone who sees me as a partner rather than a possession." I looked directly at Jonathan Pierce, which is more than I can say for the man claiming to care about my welfare. Anthony smiled slightly. "No further questions." Sarah Whitmore stood for cross-examination. She approached like a shark scenting blood. "Mrs. Moretti, you say your husband has been honest. Has he told you about the criminal investigations into his family's activities?" "He's told me that his family has been investigated, never charged, never convicted, because they haven't done anything illegal. Or because they're very good at covering their tracks." She pulled out photographs. "Do you know these men?" I looked at the photos, rough-looking men in various locations. "No. These are known associates of the Moretti family, men with criminal records, men your husband employs for security. Do you really believe you're safe surrounded by violent criminals?" "I believe I'm safer with Dante's security than I would be alone with Jonathan Pierce. At least Dante's men don't pretend to be something they're not." "You seem very defensive of your husband for someone you barely know." "I know him well enough, better than I knew Jonathan Pierce apparently. At least Dante didn't lie about who he was." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "You keep accusing my client of crimes. Do you have any proof?" "My husband's forensic accountant has the proof. Bank records showing money laundering, communications with the Calabrese family, evidence that my father discovered it and was preparing to go to the authorities." Evidence provided by the very family you claim isn't criminal? How convenient. Evidence that's been turned over to the district attorney. If it's false, let them prove it. She tried a few more questions, attempting to find inconsistencies in my story, but I'd lived this. Every word I said was true, even if the truth was complicated. Finally, she gave up. No further questions. I stepped down from the witness stand on shaking legs, made my way back to the table where Anthony waited. Dante's eyes tracked me the entire way, and I could see the approval there, the pride. Brennan looked at both lawyers. I'm going to take a short recess to review the evidence presented. We'll reconvene in 30 minutes. As everyone stood, Dante caught my eye, mouthed 2 words. You're incredible. I smiled despite everything, because in that moment, standing in a courtroom defending our marriage against a man who'd murdered my father, I felt incredible. Felt like maybe I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The 30 minutes stretched into an hour, then 90 minutes. We waited in a conference room. Me, Anthony, Elizabeth Chen, and Isabella, who'd appeared from somewhere in the courthouse. What's taking so long? I asked. Brennan scared. Anthony was reading something on his tablet. The DA's office just issued a statement. They're opening a formal investigation into Ashford Investments and Jonathan Pierce's activities, which means if Brennan rules in Pierce's favor, he's siding with someone under criminal investigation. That's bad politics. So we might actually win? We're winning, Isabella squeezed my hand. The question is whether Brennan admits it gracefully or makes us fight every inch. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. Now there will be consequences. I showed it to Anthony, who immediately handed it to Marco, who'd been stationed outside the conference room. Trace it, now, and increase security around Mrs. Moretti. Is that a threat? Isabella asked. Probably Pierce panicking, but Anthony's expression was grim. Still, we don't take chances. Before anyone could respond, we were called back to the courtroom. Brennan was already at the bench, looking like he'd aged 5 years in the past hour. After reviewing the evidence and testimony presented today, I'm prepared to rule. He looked directly at me. Mrs. Moretti, while the circumstances of your marriage are unusual, I find no evidence of coercion or incompetence. The marriage certificate is valid. Your testimony was credible. And while I have concerns about your husband's family history, those concerns do not constitute grounds for dissolving a legitimate marriage or separating you from your spouse. Relief flooded through me. Therefore, I'm lifting the restraining order effective immediately. Mr. Moretti, you're free to return home with your wife. He shifted his gaze to Jonathan Pierce. As for you, Mr. Pierce, I'm denying your petition for receivership. Given the pending criminal investigation, it would be inappropriate to grant you control over the Ashford estate. The existing freeze will remain in place until those investigations conclude. Pierce's face went purple. Your Honor, my ruling is final. If you wish to appeal, that's your right. But I strongly suggest you focus your energy on cooperating with the district attorney's investigation. Brennan Vidal came down. This hearing is adjourned. Chaos erupted. Reporters rushing for the doors. Pierce shouting at his lawyer, Sarah Whitmore trying to damage control. And through it all, Dante was moving toward me, crossing the courtroom with single-minded purpose, ignoring reporters and cameras and everyone who tried to stop him. When he reached me, he didn't hesitate, just pulled me into his arms, held me like I was the only thing that mattered. You did it, he murmured into my hair. You were perfect. We did it, together. He pulled back just enough to look at me. Let's go home. The drive back to the estate felt surreal. Dante beside me in the back seat, his hand holding mine, security vehicles flanking us front and back. We didn't talk, just existed in the silence of aftermath. When we finally pulled through the gates, I felt something release in my chest. This place that had seemed like a prison 4 days ago now felt like sanctuary. Marco opened the car door. Welcome home, Mrs. Moretti. Inside, Maria had prepared food despite the late hour. Isabella hugged us both before making excuses about needing to check on her gallery. Anthony promised to call tomorrow with updates on the DA's investigation. Then it was just Dante and me in the foyer of our house. "Hungry?" he asked. "Starving, but also exhausted, also wired, also about 5 other things at once." He smiled. That genuine expression I was learning meant he felt safe. "Come on, let's eat. Then we can be exhausted together." We ended up in the kitchen with plates of Maria's pasta, sitting at the island like normal people, having a normal meal, except nothing about this was normal. "That text I got during the recess," I said. "Do you think it was Pierce?" "Probably. Marco's tracing it." Dante's jaw tightened. "If he's threatening you, he's more desperate than I thought." "What happens now with the investigation?" "The DA will build a case. Could take months, but Elizabeth found enough evidence that Pierce will likely be indicted, at minimum for money laundering. If we're lucky, they'll find proof of your father's murder." "And if they don't?" "Then we handle it another way." His eyes met mine. "I made you a promise. Pierce will pay for what he did, one way or another." I should have been uncomfortable with the implication, should have argued against vigilante justice, but sitting there thinking about my father, about the poison slowly killing him, about Jonathan Pierce's smug face on television, I couldn't find it in myself to object. "Thank you, for today, for all of it." "You don't need to thank me. We're partners, remember? Your battles are mine now." "That works both ways. Your battles are mine too." He set down his fork, reached across the island to cut my face. "I know this has been overwhelming. The marriage, the press conference, the hearing. You've handled more in 3 weeks than most people face in a lifetime. But Vivienne," his thumb brushed my cheek, "I need you to know something." "What?" "This started as an arrangement, a deal. But somewhere between the cemetery and the courtroom, it became real for me. You became real. And He paused, seeming to search for words. "I'm falling in love with you. Maybe already have fallen. And I need you to know that before anything else happens, before the next crisis or threat or complication. I need you to know that this isn't just about honor or protection anymore. It's about wanting you, choosing you, building a life with you, because I can't imagine doing it with anyone else." My breath caught. "Dante!" "You don't have to say it back. I know it's fast. No, you might not feel the same way yet, but I needed you to know." He released my face, started to pull back. I caught his hand. "Stop running away the moment you're vulnerable. It's annoying." Despite everything, he smiled. "Noted. I don't know if what I feel is love yet, but I know that when you left because of the restraining order, I felt your absence like a physical ache. I know that standing in that courtroom, I wasn't just defending our marriage for strategic reasons. I was defending it because I wanted to, because the idea of losing you, losing this, felt unbearable." I stood, moved around the island until I was directly in front of him. "So maybe I'm falling too. Maybe this started as obligation, but became choice. Maybe we're both figuring this out as we go. Maybe is enough." He pulled me between his legs, hands settling at my waist. "Maybe is more than I expected." I kissed him then, soft and slow and full of promise. His hands tightened, pulling me closer. The kiss deepened, became urgent. "Bedroom," I whispered against his mouth. "Now." He didn't need to be told twice. Later, tangled in sheets with moonlight streaming through windows, I traced the scar on Dante's shoulder. "Where did this come from?" "Knife fight when I was 18. Stupid territorial dispute that my father forced me to handle. The other guy's in a wheelchair now." I stilled. "You paralyzed someone?" "He tried to kill me. I defended myself, but yes, the consequences were severe." His hand covered mine over the scar. "That's my world, Vivienne. Violence that leaves permanent marks. I've tried to move away from it, build something different, but the past doesn't disappear just because you want it to." "Do you regret it? What you had to become?" "Every day. But regret doesn't change anything. All I can do is try to be better moving forward." I thought about the hearing. about defending him despite knowing his history, about choosing this life with full knowledge of what it entailed. "I'm not naive," I said quietly. "I know who you are, what you've done, what you're still capable of. But I also know who you're trying to be. And that person," I looked up at him, "that person is worth believing in." His arms tightened around me. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway." He laughed, and the sound was so genuine, so unguarded, that it made my chest ache. We lay there in comfortable silence until I remembered something. The text, the threat. What if Pierce does something? What if he comes after me again? Then he discovers what happens when someone threatens what's mine. Dante's voice went cold. "I've been patient, played by the rules, let the legal system handle it. But if he escalates, if he puts you in danger..." He didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. "Dante, I don't want you doing something that puts you at risk, that makes you into the man you're trying not to be." Then we hope Pierce is smart enough to back off. Hope the DA's investigation moves quickly. Hope that justice actually works the way it's supposed to. His hand stroked through my hair. "But hope isn't a strategy, and I won't gamble with your safety." I wanted to argue, wanted to insist on doing everything the right way, but I also knew how this world worked, how men like Pierce operated, how threats became actions when people felt cornered. "Just promise me something. Anything. Promise that before you do anything irreversible, you talk to me, that we make those decisions together." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I promise. Partners, remember? Your voice matters as much as mine." I kissed his shoulder, right over that scar. "Thank you." We drifted towards sleep eventually, wrapped around each other, and for the first time since my father's death, I felt something close to peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the DA's investigation, Pierce's desperation, the continued complications of building a life in Dante's world. But tonight, I had this, had him, had the strange certainty that whatever came next, we'd face it together. And maybe that was all anyone could ask for. Chapter 7. The threat came 3 days later. I was at the clinic, a community health center in the North End that Isabella had introduced me to. They needed volunteer physicians, and I'd needed something to remind me who I was beyond Mrs. Dante Moretti, beyond the woman who'd married into organized crime and defended that choice in court. The morning had been routine. A child with strep throat, an elderly man with high blood pressure who'd been skipping his medications, a young mother worried about her newborn's breathing patterns that turned out to be completely normal. Normal, such a strange word for my life now. I was writing notes in a patient chart when the clinic door burst open. A man stumbled in, clutching his side, blood seeping between his fingers. Young, maybe 25, pale and sweating. Behind him, 2 other men, one supporting him, the other scanning the clinic with eyes that screamed danger. The receptionist started to speak, but I was already moving. "Get him in the back, now." They half carried him to an exam room. I scrubbed quickly, snapped on gloves, assessed the damage. Stab wound, lower left abdomen, deep, possibly penetrating the peritoneum. He needed a hospital, a surgeon, an operating room. But the man supporting him, older, maybe 40, with a face that had seen violence, grabbed my arm. "No hospitals, no police, you fix him here." "I can't, he needs proper surgery. If there's internal bleeding..." "Then stop the bleeding. You're a doctor, aren't you? Dante Moretti's wife?" His grip tightened. "You help us or my nephew dies." And I explained to the Calabrese family that Moretti's wife refused to save one of their own. Calabrese, the family Dante had mentioned, the ones who'd been working with Jonathan Pierce, the ones who operated in the old, violent ways. "You're threatening me?" "I'm stating facts. My nephew took a knife for his crew. You help him, we owe you." He shrugged. "Consequences happen." The wounded man moaned. consciousness fading. I looked at his face, young, terrified, dying, and felt the weight of an impossible choice settle on my shoulders. I could refuse, call 911, let proper authorities handle this, risk whatever consequences this man threatened. Or I could do what I'd done for Marco, compromise my ethics, become more deeply complicit in a world I'd married into but never fully accepted. The young man's eyes met mine, pleading, desperate. I made my choice. Get me towels, clean water, and someone find the strongest alcohol we have. This is going to hurt. 2 hours later, the young man, Carlo was his name, was stable, stitched, pale, but breathing steadily. The stab wound hadn't penetrated as deeply as I'd feared. Muscle damage, yes, but no major organs compromised. Lucky, so incredibly lucky. His uncle, Vincent, had watched the entire procedure with sharp eyes that missed nothing. When I finally stripped off my gloves and washed blood from my hands, he nodded once. You're good, better than I expected. I'm a cardiac surgeon. This wasn't exactly my specialty. But you saved him. That's what matters. He pulled out a phone, made a call in Italian too rapid for me to follow, then turned back to me. The Calabrese family remembers debts. You helped one of ours. We don't forget that. I didn't do it for your family. I did it because I'm a doctor. It's what I do. Keep telling yourself that. He moved to Carlo's bedside, touched his nephew's forehead with surprising gentleness. But you chose to help instead of calling police. That makes you one of us, whether you want to be or not. The words sent ice down my spine, because he wasn't wrong. After they left, carrying Carlo out through the back exit like smugglers instead of patients, I sat in the exam room for a long time, staring at blood-stained towels, at the instruments I'd used to save a life I probably shouldn't have. My phone buzzed. Dante. How's the clinic? Learning anything interesting? I almost laughed. If only he knew. Very educational. Tell you about it tonight. Looking forward to it. Love you. The casual way he'd started saying that over the past 3 days still caught me off guard. Like love was simple, easy, something to text between meetings and business calls. Maybe for him it was. Love you too, I typed back, and meant it, which was terrifying in its own way. I cleaned the exam room thoroughly, disposed of everything that might suggest what had happened, returned to my remaining patients with a smile that felt like a mask. By the time I left the clinic at 4, I'd almost convinced myself the morning had been a strange aberration, a one-time event that didn't mean anything. Then I saw the car. If I refuse, they threaten me, like they already did. I know how this works. You clearly don't. He stopped pacing, faced me directly. The Calabrese family doesn't make empty threats. If you become a liability instead of an asset, they'll eliminate you. And his voice cracked slightly, I won't be able to protect you from every angle. The fear underneath? Black sedan parked across the street, 2 men inside watching the clinic entrance with the focused attention of people conducting surveillance. My security team, Marco and another man named Tony, flanked me immediately. Inside the car, now. Who are they? Don't know yet, but we're not waiting to find out. The drive back to the estate took 20 minutes of checking mirrors and making random turns to lose potential tails. By the time we pulled through the gates, my heart was racing and my hands were shaking. Dante met us at the door, already informed by Marco. His face was carved from stone. Tell me exactly what happened. So I did. All of it. The wounded Calabrese soldier, the threat from his uncle, the surveillance team outside the clinic. Watching his expression darken with each detail. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then, carefully controlled, you operated on one of their men. I saved his life. There's a difference. Not to them. To the Calabrese family, you just proved you're useful, someone they can leverage. What was I supposed to do? Let him die? Yes, his voice was harsh. You let him die, or you call me and I handle it. What you don't do is become valuable to my enemies. The anger in his tone stung. I'm a doctor, Dante. I took an oath. I don't let people die because of politics. This isn't politics. This is survival. He started pacing, that controlled energy turning predatory. The Calabresi family has been testing boundaries for months, pushing into our territory. And now they know that my wife will help them if they show up bleeding. Do you understand what that means? That I have medical ethics? That you're a target. The words came out loud enough to echo. They'll use you. Every time one of their men gets hurt, they'll show up at your clinic or your car or our home, and they'll expect you to help. And if you refuse, his anger finally registered. He wasn't mad that I'd broken some criminal code. He was terrified that I'd painted a target on myself. I crossed to him, took his hands. I'm sorry. You're right. I should have called you first. In the moment, I saw someone dying and I reacted. I know. It's who you are, the person who saves everyone. His fingers tightened on mine. But Vivienne, you can't save everyone. Not in this world. Some people are meant to die. I don't believe that. Then you need to learn to. Fast. He pulled me close, rested his forehead against mine. I'm increasing security. You don't go anywhere without at least 3 men. The clinic is suspended until we figure out the Calabresi situation. And you call me immediately if anyone approaches you. Anyone. Dante, that's non-negotiable. I just got you back after 4 days of forced separation. I'm not losing you because you're too stubborn to accept protection. I wanted to argue, wanted to insist I could handle myself. But the truth was, I'd been scared in that exam room, scared of Vincent's threats, scared of the choice I'd made, scared that Dante was right about me becoming a target. Okay, increased security, no clinic for now. But Dante, yes? You can't lock me away. I need to have some kind of life beyond these walls. I know, and we'll figure it out. But right now, while the Calabresi family is still deciding what to do with the information they have, we play it safe. He kissed my forehead. Please, for me. For us, I corrected. Partners, remember? Partners. He smiled slightly. Come on, Maria made dinner. We can strategize over food like civilized criminals. Despite everything, I laughed. Dinner was interrupted by Marco appearing in the doorway with an expression that suggested bad news. Sir, we have a situation. Jonathan Pierce just left Boston, private plane to the Cayman Islands, and he withdrew $2 million from various accounts before he left. Dante set down his wine glass very carefully. He's running. Looks like it. The DA's office is scrambling to issue a warrant, but Pierce has a 12-hour head start. 12 hours is enough to disappear if you have the right connections. Dante's jaw clenched, and Pierce definitely has connections. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. If he runs, if he disappears, then we never get justice for your father, never prove the murder, never recover the money he stole. Dante stood, already moving toward his office. Marco, call everyone. I want locations on Pierce's known associates. I want eyes on every property he owns, and I want to know who helped him get out of the country. Already working on it. I followed them to Dante's office, watching as screens came to life showing maps, flight patterns, financial transactions. The scale of the operation was staggering. This wasn't just a few phone calls. This was a network, coordinated and efficient. Can you find him? I asked. Eventually, but by then he'll have moved the money somewhere we can't touch, changed his identity, built a new life. Dante's hands braced on his desk, shoulders tight with tension. Unless we stop him before he lands. How? He looked at me then, and something in his expression made my blood run cold. There's a man I know, former CIA, specializes in extraction and problem solving. He's in the Caribbean, could intercept Pierce before he reaches the Canaans. Intercept him how? However necessary. The implication hung between us. This man, this problem solver, would kill Jonathan Pierce, make him disappear, remove the threat permanently. It's what I'd wanted, wasn't it? Justice for my father, Pierce paying for his crimes. But now, faced with the reality of it, I felt sick. That's murder. That's justice, the kind the courts can't provide. Dante moved around the desk, took my hands. Vivienne, I know this is hard. No, it goes against everything you believe. But Pierce killed your father. He's stealing your inheritance. And now he's running away to live comfortably on the money he's stolen and the lives he's destroyed. I know, but if you have him killed, then he can't hurt anyone else. Can't come back later for revenge. Can't hire people to come after you when he's safely out of reach. His thumbs brushed across my knuckles. I'm trying to give you a choice. We can let the DA handle it through official channels and probably never see justice. Or we can handle it my way and Pierce never threatens you again. It's not really a choice if one option means my father's murderer goes free. No, I suppose it isn't. I thought about my father, about the funeral where I'd stood alone while Jonathan Pierce played the concerned family friend, about the poison slowly killing him over months, about the press conference where Pierce had claimed to worry about my safety while trying to steal everything. Your way, I heard myself say. Handle it your way. Dante searched my face. Are you sure? No, but I'm saying it anyway. I pulled my hands free, wrapped my arms around myself. Just don't tell me the details. Don't make me complicit in the actual act. I have already compromised enough. You're not complicit. You're just becoming more like you, more like this world. I know. I looked up at him. Is this what it's always going to be like? Impossible choices between bad options? No, most days are boring. But when crises come, he pulled me close. Yes, it's hard choices. It's compromise. It's becoming someone you never thought you'd be. But Vivienne, you're not doing this alone. Every choice we make together. I leaned into him, let his warmth and solidity anger me. Make the call to your problem solver. But Dante, yes, if this is how we're starting our marriage, handling threats and making terrible decisions together, then I need to know it means something, that we're building towards something better. We are. I promise you, we are. He kissed the top of my head. This is the last of the old business. Pierce, the Calabrese family, the threats from my father's era. Once we've cleared the board, we can start fresh, build the legitimate empire I've been working toward. And if new threats emerge, then we handle them together. But each time we do it more honorably, more carefully, until eventually we're the family people come to for justice instead of violence. I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this world could change, that we could be part of that change. Make the call, I said again. He did. The next 48 hours were torture. Dante's problem solver, a man named James, who Dante refused to describe in detail, had confirmed Pierce's flight path, had positioned himself at a small airfield in the Dominican Republic where Pierce's plane would refuel. What would happen there? I didn't ask. Instead, I tried to maintain normalcy, had breakfast with Isabella, who'd stopped by with fresh pastries and gossip about her gallery, worked in the greenhouse, replanting herbs that had overgrown their containers, read medical journals in the library like I was still a surgeon instead of a criminal's wife planning murder. Dante was busy with meetings, calls conducted in rapid Italian that I only partially understood, Marco coming and going with updates, the machine of his organization moving with precision I couldn't help but admire even as it terrified me. On the second night, he found me in the greenhouse around midnight. I'd been unable to sleep, had wandered down seeking the comfort of growing things. Couldn't sleep either, he said, settling beside me on the bench where I'd been staring at orchids. Thinking about Pierce, about what's happening. Don't. It's handled. You don't need to carry it. But I am carrying it. I made the choice. We made the choice. His arm came around my shoulders. And Vivienne, for what it's worth, Pierce brought this on himself. He could have walked away, could have accepted that his crimes were exposed. Instead, he ran, chose to keep being a threat. Does that make it right? No, but it makes it necessary. We sat in silence for a while, surrounded by his mother's flowers. Finally, I said, "Tell me about her, your mother. What would she think about all this?" Dante was quiet so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, softly, "She'd hate it. Hate that I've become what I've become, that I've brought you into this world. She wanted me to be better, to choose light. But she also understood that sometimes survival means making dark choices. She stayed with my father despite knowing what he was, raised Isabella and me in this world because leaving meant death. She chose light where she could and accepted darkness where she couldn't." He looked at me. "I think she'd understand what we're doing, even if she didn't approve." "I hope you're right." His phone buzzed. He checked it, and something in his expression shifted. Relief, grim satisfaction. "It's done. Pierce's plane had mechanical issues during refueling. He didn't survive the explosion." The words registered slowly. Pierce was dead. The man who'd killed my father, who'd tried to steal everything, who'd threatened me, gone. I should have felt triumph, relief, something. Instead, I just felt tired. "Good," I managed. "That's good. James is handling the cleanup. It'll look like an accident, faulty fuel line. These things happen with private planes." Dante pulled me closer. "It's over, Vivienne. Pierce can't hurt you anymore. Can't hurt anyone." "And the money he stole?" "James secured his laptop before the explosion. Our forensic accountants are tracking the transfers now. We'll recover most of it." It was over, just like that. The threat eliminated. Justice served, however dark. "I should feel relieved," I whispered, "but I just feel like you've crossed a line you can't uncross." "I know. I felt the same way the first time I ordered something like this." His hand found mine, fingers lacing together. "But Vivienne, that feeling means you're still human, still capable of guilt and doubt. The day it stops bothering you is the day you've become something else entirely." "What if I'm already becoming something else?" "Then we're becoming it together, and we'll make sure whatever we become still has pieces of the people we want it to be." I leaned against him, let his heartbeat steady my own. Outside the greenhouse, the estate was quiet, safe, protected by walls and security and the reputation of the man beside me. This was my life now, wife to a crime lord, complicit in violence, making choices I'd never imagined having to make, but also loved, protected, part of something larger than myself. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it had to be. The DA's office announced 3 days later that Jonathan Pierce had died in a tragic plane accident in the Dominican Republic. An investigation was ongoing, but preliminary reports suggested mechanical failure. His estate would be frozen pending the completion of their criminal investigation into his activities at Ashford Investments. The news coverage was extensive. Speculation about why Pierce had fled the country. Theories about his death being convenient timing. But no proof. No evidence connecting Dante or his organization to the explosion. Just tragedy befalling a man who'd made enemies. The freeze on my father's estate was lifted a week later. With Pierce dead and evidence of his crimes overwhelming, the court appointed Anthony Romano as temporary administrator until I was ready to take control. I inherited everything: the firm, the properties, the investments that Pierce hadn't managed to steal. Millions of dollars that should have made me feel secure, but mostly just felt like weight. "You could sell it all," Dante suggested one evening as we reviewed the financial statements. "Walk away from your father's business. Start fresh with something entirely yours." Is that what you want? For me to have nothing to do with my family's legacy? I want you to be happy. If running Ashford Investments makes you happy, do it. If it doesn't, we'll find something else. I looked at the numbers, at my father's signature on old documents, at the company he'd built and Pierce had tried to destroy. I want to transform it, like you're transforming your family's businesses. Make it cleaner, more ethical, something I can be proud of. Then that's what we'll do. He pulled me onto his lap, wrapped his arms around my waist. Partners in crime and in legitimacy. That's not actually how that phrase works. I'm adapting it. I laughed despite everything, despite the darkness we'd waded through, despite the choices we'd made, because this, sitting with him, planning a future, laughing at bad jokes, this felt real, felt like maybe we could build something good from complicated beginnings. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mrs. Moretti, this is Vincent, Carlos' uncle." Ice flooded my veins. Dante tensed immediately, probably hearing the name through the phone. "What do you want?" "To thank you, properly. Carlo's recovering well. The Calabrese family doesn't forget debts." A pause. "We're pulling back from the territories we've been disputing with your husband. Consider it a show of good faith. What you did for my nephew matters. Family helping family, that's how the old ways were supposed to work." I glanced at Dante, whose expression had gone carefully neutral. "I didn't help Carlo for your family. I helped him because he was dying." "I know. That's why it matters. You didn't have to. Could have let him die and blamed it on his wounds, but you chose differently." Vincent's voice softened slightly. "My nephew has a chance at a real life now. College, a career, something besides violence. His mother thanks you. I thank you. And the Calabrese family owes you a debt we take seriously." He hung up before I could respond. I set down my phone, looked at Dante. Did that really just happen? "I think the Calabrese family just called a truce because you saved one of theirs." He shook his head slowly. "Vivienne, do you realize what you've done? Accidentally prevented a gang war? More than that, you've shown them a different way. Family helping family, honor over violence. The things my mother used to talk about before this world became what it is." He cupped my face. "You might be the best thing that's ever happened to this family. Or the most naive. Maybe both." He kissed me softly. "But I'll take it. Take you, take whatever version of this life we can build together." I kissed him back, deeper this time, letting the conversation fade into touch and breath and the promise of what came next. That night, wrapped in sheets with moonlight streaming through windows, Dante traced patterns on my skin. "There's something I need to tell you." The seriousness in his tone made me tense. "What?" "The Calabrese truce. It's good. It's progress. But there are other families, other territories, other threats that won't be solved by one act of mercy." His hand stilled on my hip. "Building the legitimate empire I want, making this family into something honorable, it's going to take years, maybe decades. There will be more hard choices, more moments where we have to decide between who we want to be and who we need to be to survive." "I know. And you're still willing to do this? To stay in this world and help me transform it?" I thought about the past month, about cemetery visits and forced marriages and courtroom battles. about saving lives I shouldn't have and ordering deaths I never imagined, about falling in love with a man who was both dangerous and tender, violent and gentle, exactly what I needed and everything I should have avoided. I'm still willing. But Dante, yes, we do it together. Every choice, every compromise, every step forward and every slide backward, we face it as partners. Always. He pulled me closer. I love you, Vivienne Moretti, more than I thought I could love anyone, more than is probably safe for either of us. I love you too, which is terrifying. Good, fear keeps us honest. I smiled against his chest. Is that your life philosophy? One of many. Stick around and I'll teach you all of them. Planning to keep me around? Planning to never let you go. We drifted toward sleep like that, wrapped around each other, plotting a future that seemed both impossible and inevitable. And somewhere in the darkness, I felt my father's presence. Approval, maybe? Or just acceptance that I'd chosen my own path, that I'd honored his deal but made it mine, that I'd become exactly who I needed to be to survive in this world, even if that person wasn't who I'd expected. Chapter 8. 6 months later, spring arrived at the estate like a promise kept. I stood in the greenhouse watching cherry blossoms bloom outside, thinking about how much had changed since that October funeral, since the day I'd met Dante Moretti and my carefully planned life had become something else entirely. The Ashford estate had been fully released from probate. I'd taken control of the company, spending 3 months restructuring operations and removing anyone connected to Pierce's money laundering. Half the board had resigned. The other half had fallen in line once they realized the Moretti family backing meant more stability than Pierce's criminal connections ever had. The firm was profitable again, clean, something I could manage without compromising the ethics I'd somehow managed to keep despite everything. The clinic had reopened 2 months ago with expanded services and Moretti family funding. No more wounded soldiers stumbling through the door. Dante had made it clear that my medical skills were for the community, not for patching up criminals. But the Calabrese family's truce had held, surprisingly. They'd even donated to the clinic, a gesture that Vincent claimed was about honoring debts, but felt more like respect. Like maybe this world could change, slowly, with effort from all sides. There you are. I turned to find Dante in the doorway, wearing jeans and a dark shirt, looking more relaxed than he had in months. The constant tension that had defined our early weeks had eased into something steadier, more sustainable. Hiding from wedding planning, I admitted, Isabella has opinions about everything. She's excited. Let her have this. He crossed to me, pulled me into his arms. Besides, she didn't get to plan our actual wedding. The least we can do is let her go overboard on the reception. Our wedding reception was scheduled for next month, a proper celebration now that the immediate crises had passed. Something public and elegant where we could show the world that the Moretti-Ashford alliance was built on more than desperation, that it had become real. I got the final numbers from Elizabeth, Dante said, referring to his forensic accountant. We recovered 90% of what Pierce stole from your father's estate. The rest was lost in offshore accounts we can't touch without causing international incidents. But 90% is more than I expected. I rested my head on his chest. Thank you for making that happen. You're my wife. Your battles are mine. His hand stroked through my hair, now grown longer than I'd worn it in years. Though, speaking of battles, we need to discuss something. The seriousness in his tone made me pull back. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, but there's an opportunity, one that could change everything for the family. He led me to the bench where we'd sat so many nights, plotting and planning and just being together. The Castellanos, one of the oldest families in Boston, are retiring, selling off their territories and businesses. If we acquire them, it would make the Moretti organization the largest legitimate operation in the city. Legitimate? Completely. Real estate, construction, waste management, all above board. It's what I've been working toward, the final step in transforming everything my father built. I could hear the hope in his voice, the dream he'd been chasing since long before I'd entered his life. That's incredible. What's the catch? The price, $50 million. I have 30, can secure loans for another 15, but we're still 5 million short. He took my hands. I could ask the other families for backing, but that creates obligations, debts I'd rather not owe. Or you could ask me. I understood immediately. Use money from my inheritance. Only if you're comfortable. It's your father's legacy, your security. I won't pressure you into risking it. I thought about my father, about the deal he'd made to protect me, about how that protection had evolved into partnership, into love, into building something together. How much return on investment are we talking? Dante smiled, spoken like a true businesswoman. Conservatively, double your money in 5 years. Best case, triple it in 3. And if it fails, then we still have the existing businesses, still have stability. You'd lose the investment, but not everything. I looked at our joined hands, at the gold bands we both wore, at the life we'd built in 6 months that felt both impossible and inevitable. 5 million for the Castellano acquisition, but I want something in return. Name it. I want a seat at the table, not just as your wife, as a partner in the business. I want to help shape what we're building. His eyes widened slightly. You want to be part of the organization? I'm already part of it, whether we acknowledge it or not. I'd rather be involved officially, have a voice in decisions, help guide us toward the legitimacy you want. I squeezed his hands. You taught me that this world doesn't have to be all darkness. Let me help make it lighter. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then he pulled me into a kiss that tasted like promise and relief and something deeper. You're sure? He asked when we finally broke apart. Because once you're officially involved, there's no going back. People will see you differently, judge you harder. They already do. I'm Vivienne Moretti, the doctor who married the mob. At least this way I can shape the narrative instead of just defending it. Then yes, 5 million for the investment and a seat at the family table. He kissed my forehead. Partners in everything. Partners in everything. The family meeting was called for the following Sunday. Dante's inner circle, his uncle Marco, his aunt Rosa, Isabella, and now me, plus Anthony Romano, representing legal interests, and Elizabeth Chen on financial matters. We gathered in Dante's office, the screens dark for once, everyone seated around the conference table like we were planning a corporate merger instead of a criminal enterprise going legitimate. Which I supposed we were. Dante laid out the Castellano opportunity, the territories, the businesses, the price, and the timeline. Everyone listened with the focused attention of people who understood that decisions made in this room affected hundreds of lives. The acquisition makes sense, Marco said when Dante finished. Castellano's retiring because he's smart enough to see the future. The old ways are dying. Families that don't adapt get destroyed. This gives us legitimacy and reach we've never had. But 50 million is steep, Rosa countered. Even with loans and Vivienne's contribution, it's a risk. If the economy shifts, if construction slows. We diversify, I interjected. Everyone turned to look at me. The Castellano holdings are concentrated in construction and waste management. We balance that with your existing real estate and my father's investment portfolio. Create multiple revenue streams so no single market shift destroys us. Elizabeth nodded approvingly. That's smart, and if we structure it correctly, we can create a holding company that separates the Moretti family assets from the Ashford assets while still benefiting from shared resources. Meaning what exactly? Isabella asked. Meaning, if something goes wrong on one side, it doesn't destroy the other. Protection for both families. Elizabeth pulled up documents on her tablet. I've drafted preliminary structures. It's complicated, but doable. We spent the next 2 hours reviewing financial projections, legal structures, and risk assessments. It felt surreal, sitting with my husband's family, planning empire building like I belonged there. like I'd always belonged there. Finally, Marco leaned back in his chair. I vote yes. It's time. Past time, honestly. My brother. He glanced at Dante with something like regret. Your father would have never made this move. Would have seen legitimacy as weakness. But he was wrong. Strength isn't violence. It's adaptation. I agree, Rosa said, though I want assurances about the people working in Castellano's operations. They've been loyal to him. Will they accept new management? Castellano's already talked to his key people. Most are ready to retire or transition. The younger generation sees the writing on the wall. Dante looked around the table. This is our chance to remake everything, to become what my mother wanted us to be. Isabella's eyes were shining. Then let's do it. Let's build something she'd be proud of. The vote was unanimous. Afterward, as everyone filed out, Anthony pulled me aside. You did well in there. Confident, prepared. You're a natural at this. I'm a doctor playing businesswoman. Half the time I'm terrified I'll say something wrong. Then you hide it well, he smiled slightly. Dante's lucky to have you. The family's lucky to have you. Just, he paused, be careful. Even legitimate businesses have complications. Enemies who want what you're building. You're visible now. That makes you vulnerable. I know. Dante reminds me constantly. Good. Keep listening to him. And Vivienne? He met my eyes. Welcome to the family, officially. The Castellano acquisition closed 6 weeks later. $50 million transferred. Properties deeded. Employees transitioned. By midsummer, the Moretti organization controlled 40% of Boston's legitimate construction industry and substantial real estate holdings. We were, by any standard, incredibly wealthy and incredibly visible. The Boston Globe ran a feature on the Moretti family's transformation, how a criminal empire had gone legitimate in a single generation. They interviewed Dante, who spoke eloquently about his mother's influence and his desire to build something lasting. They mentioned me in passing, the cardiac surgeon who'd married into the family and brought legitimacy. I hated the exposure, loved what it represented. We were winning, actually winning. But Anthony's warning about enemies proved prescient. The attack came on a Thursday evening. Dante and I were leaving a restaurant in the North End, one of the family-owned places where we ate regularly, where staff knew us and security was built in. Except tonight, the security wasn't enough. 3 men, ski masks, guns drawn, blocking the alley we'd taken as a shortcut to where Marco had parked. Keys and phones, now. Dante moved immediately, positioning himself between me and the gunmen. His voice was calm, controlled. Take what you want. Leave her alone. We want her. You get to watch what happens when you steal from the wrong people. Wrong people? This wasn't random robbery. This was targeted. One of the men grabbed my arm, started dragging me backward. Dante lunged, and the world exploded into violence. Gunshots, shouting, Dante's body colliding with one of the attackers. Marco appearing from somewhere, weapon drawn. The smell of gunpowder and blood. I hit the ground hard, rolled, felt glass cut through my palms, scrambled toward the restaurant entrance while chaos erupted behind me. More gunshots, someone screaming, maybe me. Then silence that was somehow worse than noise. I looked back. Dante was standing over 2 bodies, chest heaving, blood on his shirt. Marco was zip-tying the 3rd attacker, who was very much alive and very clearly terrified. Vivienne, Dante's voice cut through my shock. Are you hurt? I looked down, blood on my hands from the glass. Nothing serious. Nothing compared to what I'd just witnessed. I'm fine. You? Fine. He crossed to me, pulled me up, checked me over with hands that were remarkably steady considering he'd just killed 2 people. We need to leave, now, before police arrive. But now, Vivienne. Marco was already moving, pushing the surviving attacker ahead of him. We followed through a back entrance I hadn't noticed into a waiting car, speeding away before I could fully process what had happened. We ended up at a safe house I didn't know existed. Small apartment in Southie, nondescript, the kind of place that could hide people who needed hiding. Dante made calls while Marco secured the perimeter. I sat on a worn couch, staring at my cut palms, replaying those moments of violence over and over. He'd killed 2 people, hadn't hesitated, just moved with brutal efficiency to eliminate threats. This was who he was, what he was capable of, and I'd just seen it firsthand. Hey, Dante crouched in front of me, medical kit in hand. Let me see your hands. I let him clean the cuts, apply antiseptic, bandage what needed bandaging. His hands were gentle despite the blood still on his shirt. His own blood or theirs, I couldn't tell. Are you okay? I asked quietly. I should be asking you that. You killed them, 2 men. I snapped my fingers. Gone. They were going to hurt you, probably kill you. I did what was necessary. His eyes met mine, and I'd do it again, every time, without hesitation. I know, that's what scares me. That I'd kill for you? That it doesn't bother you. I pulled my hands free, wrapped my arms around myself. I watched people die tonight, watched you end lives like it was nothing, and you're just calm, like this is normal. It is normal, for my world, for the person I had to become. He sat back on his heels. But Vivienne, I'm not a monster. Those men made a choice. They chose to threaten you, to try to take you from me, and that choice had consequences. Who sent them? We're finding out. The one who survived is very motivated to talk. His jaw tightened. But whoever it is just made a fatal mistake, because now I know they're willing to come after you, and that means they've declared war. The cold certainty in his voice sent chills through me. This is what you meant when you said there would be more threats, more hard choices. Yes, and I'm sorry you had to see it. Sorry you're part of it, but he took my bandaged hands gently. You are part of it. My wife, my partner, which means my enemies become yours, and we handle them the only way this world understands, with violence, when necessary, but also with strategy, with alliances, with the legitimacy we've built that makes it harder for enemies to move against us openly. He kissed my knuckles. Tonight was the old way trying to drag us back. We're not going back. I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this was an aberration rather than the new normal. But looking at his blood-stained shirt, I couldn't shake the feeling that we just crossed another line, that the legitimate empire we were building still had violence at its foundation. The man who survived, what will happen to him? He'll tell us who sent him, then he'll be dealt with. Dealt with meaning killed. Meaning he'll face consequences for his choices. I closed my eyes. I need time to process this, to figure out if I can actually live in a world where people die because they threaten me. Take all the time you need. But Vivienne, he waited until I looked at him. Don't leave me. Whatever you're feeling, whatever you're questioning, stay. Fight through it with me instead of walking away. I'm not walking away. I tried to find words. I'm trying to reconcile the man I love with the man who just killed 2 people without blinking. They're the same man. I've always been both. You just hadn't seen it directly before. His hand cupped my face. I don't want you to love me despite the darkness. I want you to love all of me, the parts that save lives and the parts that take them, because that's who I am. That's who I'll always be. Could I do that? Love someone fully when half of who they were terrified me? I thought about the past 6 months, about cemetery visits and courthouse battles, about building businesses and saving lives, about nights wrapped in his arms feeling safer than I'd ever felt, about choosing him over and over despite every reason not to. "I'm trying," I whispered. "God help me, I'm trying." "That's all I ask." He pulled me into his arms, held me while I shook. "We'll get through this, together, like everything else." I wanted to believe him. Prayed I could. The man who survived gave up his employer by dawn. Not the Calabrese family. They'd honored their truce. Not any of the established families. A new player, Russian, trying to establish territory by taking out the Morettis' most visible vulnerability. Me. "His name is Dmitry Volkov," Marco explained the next morning over coffee that tasted like ash. "Former Bratva, broke away when the organization downsized. Now he's freelancing, taking contracts, building his own operation. And someone paid him to kill me? To send a message that the Moretti family's new legitimacy makes them weak, that they can't protect what matters." Marco's expression was grim. He was wrong, but the message was sent. What happens now? Dante, who'd been quiet through most of Marco's explanation, finally spoke. "We send our own message, one that makes it clear attacking my family has consequences. No one survives." The cold finality in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something else, something darker and more primal. Anger. These people, Volkov, his employer, whoever thought I was an acceptable target, they'd tried to kill me, to hurt Dante through me, to destroy what we'd built. And I was tired of being a pawn in other people's wars. "I want to be there," I said. Both men looked at me in surprise. "When you deal with Volkov, when you send your message, I want to be there." "Vivienne, that's not. I'm part of this family now, part of the organization. You gave me a seat at the table." I met Dante's eyes. "So let me sit at it all the way, even when it's ugly." He studied my face for a long moment. "You don't know what you're asking." "I'm asking to face the man who tried to kill me, to see justice served. Isn't that what you promised, that we'd face everything together? This isn't a boardroom decision. This is," he struggled for words, "this is the darkest part of what we do, what I do. I've kept you away from it deliberately. And that was your choice, but it's my choice too, and I choose to see it, to understand exactly what protecting our family requires." I reached across the table, took his hand. "You said you wanted me to love all of you, the darkness and the light. So show me the darkness. Let me decide if I can handle it." Marco cleared his throat. "She has a point, and honestly, it might help. Show Volkov exactly who he was threatening, that the Moretti family doesn't have weak links, just different kinds of strength." Dante was quiet for so long I thought he'd refuse. Then, finally, "Okay, but Vivienne, if at any point you want to leave, you leave. No questions asked, no judgment. Understood?" "Understood." They brought Dmitry Volkov to the basement of the safe house that evening. The same basement where I'd once examined documents and maps with Dante, now reconfigured for something darker. A chair bolted to the floor, restraints, tools I didn't want to identify. And Volkov himself, 40s, scarred, defiant, even with his hands tied and blood crusted on his face from Marco's interrogation. I stood in the corner with Isabella, who'd insisted on coming too. For moral support, she'd said, but I suspected it was more about making sure I could actually handle this. Dante entered last, his presence immediately dominating the space. He pulled up a chair, sat facing Volkov with casual control. "I want a name. Who hired you to kill my wife?" "Go to hell." "Eventually, but first you're going to tell me who's stupid enough to think attacking my family would end well." "You're finished, Moretti. Your grandfather would be ashamed of what you've become. Going soft, going legal. You're not a boss anymore. You're a businessman in a suit." Dante smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "You think legitimacy makes me weak? Let me show you what I learned from my grandfather, what I've chosen not to use. Until now. What followed was methodical, professional, not the explosive violence of the alley, but something colder, more calculated. Dante didn't raise his voice, didn't lose control, just applied pressure in ways that made Volkov scream, made him beg, made him finally, desperately give up the name. Malcolm Rhodes, Boston crime reporter, he's the one who paid us, said bringing down the Morettis would make his career. A reporter, someone who saw our transformation as a story to exploit rather than progress to support. Dante stood, nodded to Marco. Verify it, then handle Rhodes appropriately. And Volkov? Dante looked at me. That's up to my wife. Everyone turned to stare. Isabella's hand found mine, squeezed. This was the test, the moment where I decided what kind of person I was in this world, what kind of justice I believed in. Volkov had tried to kill me, would have killed me if Dante hadn't been faster, would probably try again if given the chance. The old Vivienne, the doctor who believed in saving everyone, would have argued for mercy, for police involvement, for justice through proper channels. But that Vivienne had died somewhere between cemetery visits and midnight murders. The woman who'd emerged from that grief was harder, more pragmatic, more willing to accept that some people were too dangerous to leave breathing. Handle it, I said quietly, whatever that means. Just make sure it's quick. Dante's eyes held mine for a long moment. Then he nodded. Marco, quick and clean, no suffering. Understood. Isabella pulled me toward the stairs. Come on, you don't need to see the rest. But I'd already seen enough. Seen the darkness Dante lived with, the choices he made to protect what mattered. Seen myself become someone who could make those choices too. We didn't talk about it that night, or the next day, just existed in careful silence, processing what had happened. The news reported 3 days later that Malcolm Rhodes had died in a mugging gone wrong. Police were investigating but had no leads. His editor gave a tearful interview about what a passionate journalist he'd been. No one mentioned that he'd hired assassins, that he'd tried to destroy a family for a story. Dmitry Volkov simply disappeared. No body, no report, just gone. This was how the world worked. Real consequences for real threats. Justice delivered quietly by people who understood that sometimes the law wasn't enough. I should have been horrified, should have reconsidered everything about the life I'd chosen. Instead, I felt relieved, safe, protected by a man who'd eliminate anyone who threatened what we'd built. Are you okay? Dante asked one evening a week later. We were in bed, the familiar space where our most honest conversations happened. I don't know. I killed a man, ordered his death anyway. That should change me fundamentally, make me into someone else. Does it? I thought about it. No, it just makes me more aware of who I've become, what I'm capable of, what this world has made me. And what's that? Someone who protects her family, whatever it takes, however dark it gets. I turned to face him. Your wife, in all the ways that matters. His arms tightened around me. I'm sorry you had to see that, had to be part of it. I'm not. Better to know the truth. Better to understand exactly what our life requires. This won't be the last time. There will be other threats, other Volkovs who think we're vulnerable. Then we'll handle them, together, like everything else. I kissed him softly. I'm all in, Dante. The darkness and the light, the legitimate business, and the not quite legitimate protection, all of it. Even when it terrifies you? Especially then, because that's when partnership matters most. He held me close, and I felt his heartbeat steady against mine, felt the weight of the choices we'd made and the life we were building. It wasn't perfect, wasn't what I'd planned, but it was real, and it was ours. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough. Epilogue. 2 years later. The christening was held at St. Anthony's Church on a perfect October afternoon. The same church where Dante and I had married 3 years ago, where I'd stood in a simple dress promising to build something worthy of my father's sacrifice. Now we stood at the altar again, our daughter in Dante's arms, preparing to welcome her into the family that had become mine. Elena Maria Moretti, 6 months old, dark hair like her father, my mother's eyes, and a temper that suggested she'd inherited the stubbornness from both sides. She was perfect. "She looks just like you," Isabella whispered beside me. My sister-in-law had been designated godmother, a role she took seriously enough to have spent the past week fretting about her responsibilities. "She has Dante's chin." And his intensity. Look at how she's staring at the priest like she's judging his sermon. I smiled despite my nervousness. Public events still made me anxious, even after years of learning to navigate this world. The church was full. Dante's family, my small remaining circle, the associates and employees who'd become extended family. And in the back, barely noticeable unless you knew to look, the security detail that had become permanent fixtures of our life. Some threats never fully disappeared, but we'd learned to live with that reality. Father Michael began the ceremony, his voice echoing through the cathedral. Elena squirmed in Dante's arms but didn't cry, strong-willed already, refusing to give in even when uncomfortable. My daughter would be formidable. As the priest anointed Elena's forehead with holy water, I felt Dante's free hand find mine, squeezed, a reminder that we were in this together, just like we'd been in everything else. The ceremony concluded with blessings and prayers. Then we processed back down the aisle, Elena now calm in her father's arms, the picture of a normal family. If you ignored the armed guards, and the complicated wealth, and the fact that her parents had built their empire on foundations most people would never understand. Outside the church, camera flashes went off. We'd become subjects of fascination over the past 3 years, the mob boss who'd gone legitimate, and the doctor who'd civilized him. The narrative wasn't quite accurate, but it was close enough that we didn't fight it. Let people believe what they wanted. We knew the truth. "Mrs. Moretti, any comment on the Globe article about your family's charitable foundation?" I smiled for the cameras. "Just that we're proud to give back to the community. Boston has been good to us. It's important to return that generosity." The reporter looked like she wanted to ask more, probably about the continuing rumors of organized crime connections, but Anthony Romano materialized at my elbow. "That's all for today. Thank you for coming." He ushered us toward the waiting cars with practiced efficiency. 3 years as our legal counsel had made him expert at managing public perception. The reception was held at the estate in gardens now fully bloomed under Isabella's careful management. White tents, string lights, tables laden with food from every restaurant the family owned. It was excessive, beautiful, exactly the kind of celebration Dante's mother would have loved. Her photograph held a place of honor near the entrance, roses arranged around the frame. Elena had been named for her, a promise that we wouldn't forget where we came from, even as we built something new. "She would have adored Elena," Rosa said, appearing beside me with champagne, "would have spoiled her absolutely rotten." "Like you're planning to do?" "That's my right as great aunt. Besides, someone has to balance out Dante's intensity. That man treats parenting like a military operation." I laughed because it was true. Dante had approached fatherhood with the same strategic focus he brought to business, reading parenting books, consulting experts, building schedules and systems. Then Elena had arrived and destroyed every plan within the first week. Now he was simply devoted, a father who checked on her multiple times each night, who held her for hours without complaint, who'd threatened physical violence against a photographer who'd gotten too aggressive outside a restaurant. Protective, possessive, perfect. "Vivienne!" Tyler approached with his girlfriend, a fellow economics professor named Sarah, whom I'd cautiously approved of. Great party, though I still can't believe you let Isabella plan the whole thing. She has a gift, and she's been dying to use it since Elena was born. My brother had slowly come to accept my life over the past 3 years. He still didn't love that I'd married into the Moretti family, but he'd seen how happy I was, how protected, how the life Dante and I had built together was complicated but real. That had been enough for him to stop trying to save me from choices I'd made deliberately. "How's the firm?" he asked. "Good. We just closed a major acquisition in the biotech sector. Clean investment, good returns, the kind of thing Dad would have been proud of." I took a sip of champagne. "What about you? Still teaching, or have you been lured away by private sector offers?" "Still teaching, though I've been consulting for a few firms. Nothing that would compromise academic integrity, but enough to make student loans less painful." He glanced around. "Is it weird that I'm getting used to all this? The security, the opulence, the fact that my niece is growing up in a mansion with armed guards." "Yes, but weird doesn't mean wrong." I watched Dante across the garden, Elena asleep on his shoulder while he talked with Marco. "This is our life now, all the strange complications that come with it." Tyler followed my gaze. "He's good with her, better than I expected. He's good at everything he commits to. Fatherhood is just his latest obsession. And you, how are you handling it all? The baby, the business, the continued public fascination with your reformed crime family?" I considered the question honestly. 3 years ago, I'd been a surgeon drowning in grief, barely holding my life together. Now I was a mother, a businesswoman, a partner in an organization that straddled legitimacy and its criminal past. I'd saved lives and ordered deaths, built wealth and navigated danger, become someone I never imagined being. "I'm happy," I said finally. "Complicated and occasionally terrified, but happy. That's more than I thought I'd have after Dad died." Tyler pulled me into a hug. "Then I'm happy for you, even if your life gives me anxiety." The party continued through the afternoon and into evening, family and friends celebrating new life and old bonds. Isabella gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. Rosa told embarrassing stories about Dante as a child. Marco presented Elena with a silver rattle that probably cost more than most people's cars. It was excessive and warm and exactly what our strange family had become. As the sun set and guests began departing, I found Dante in the library, Elena still sleeping on his shoulder. "You're missing your own party." "Needed a break. Too many people wanting to hold her." His hand rubbed gentle circles on her back. "Besides, I like watching her sleep. Reminds me what we're building all this for." I settled beside him, rested my head on his free shoulder. "Thank you." "For what?" "For giving me this, her, a family I didn't know I needed." "You gave me the same thing, a reason to be better, to build something lasting." He kissed the top of my head. "Though I have to admit, 3 years ago when I saw you in that cemetery, I never imagined this." "What did you imagine?" "Honestly, a business arrangement that would benefit both families. Maybe friendship if we were lucky. I never thought—" He paused. "I never thought I'd fall in love. Never thought I'd become a father. Never thought I'd want a legitimate life as much as I do now." "Regrets?" "Not a single one. You?" I thought about the cemetery where we'd met, the funeral where everything changed, the deal my father made that had seemed like a curse but became salvation. No regrets, just gratitude that grief led me to you. We sat in comfortable silence, our daughter sleeping between us, until Isabella found us. "There you are, hiding from your own party. Very rude." But she was smiling. "Come on, Rosa wants a family photo before everyone leaves." We followed her outside where Rosa had assembled the extended family. Dante's uncle Marco with his wife, various cousins and their children, Anthony and Elizabeth, who'd become so integral to our operations, they were practically family. And at the center, Dante and me with Elena. A family built on complicated foundations, but real nonetheless. The photographer arranged us, took dozens of shots, captured what we'd become. Later, after the last guests had departed and Maria had cleaned up, Dante and I put Elena to bed in the nursery we decorated with such care. Her breathing evened out almost immediately, exhausted from a day of attention. "She's perfect," Dante whispered, adjusting her blanket. "She's going to be trouble, just like her parents." "Probably." He took my hand, led me out to the hallway. "There's something I want to show you." He guided me to his office, to the wall where maps had once shown territories and boundaries. Now it displayed something different. A family tree, starting with his great-grandfather and extending down through generations. At the bottom, newly added, was Elena's name. But beside it, he'd added something else, a branch showing my family. My father, my mother, Tyler, all of us woven together into one complicated, beautiful lineage. "We're not two families anymore," Dante said quietly. "We're one, built from grief and obligation, but transformed into something real, something lasting." I traced the lines connecting us all, the Morettis and Ashfords, criminals and doctors, darkness and light. Dad would have loved this, seeing his legacy preserved, knowing his sacrifice meant something. It meant everything. "He gave me you." Dante pulled me close. "And you gave me a reason to be worthy of the gift." We stood there looking at our joined family tree, at the life we'd built from impossible beginnings, at the future we'd created for our daughter. It wasn't perfect. We still navigated threats and complications, still made hard choices that kept me awake some nights, still operated in gray areas that made traditional morality complicated. But it was ours, honestly earned through years of choosing each other, of building something bigger than either of us alone. "I love you," I said, not for the first time, but somehow it felt important to say again, every part of you, the darkness and the light. "I love you too, always have, always will," he kissed me softly. "Thank you for choosing this life, for choosing me. Thank you for making it worth choosing." We stayed like that until Elena's cry pulled us back to the nursery, back to the practical realities of parenthood and partnership, back to the life we'd built together, one impossible choice at a time. 5 years later, I stood in my father's office, my office now, looking at the framed photograph on the desk. Victor Ashford smiled up at me, frozen in time before complications and debts had consumed him, before he'd made the deal that changed everything. "Mom, Papa says you're late for dinner." I turned to find Elena in the doorway, now 5 years old and precocious as predicted. Behind her, her younger brother Antonio toddled uncertainly, all of 2 years old and determined to keep up with his sister. "Tell Papa I'm coming. I just needed a minute." "Are you looking at Grandpa Victor again?" Elena crossed the room with the confidence of a child who'd never known fear. "Isabella says he would have loved us." "He would have, very much." "Even though we're half Moretti?" I smiled at the question. At 5, Elena was already aware of the complicated legacy she'd inherited. The doctor grandfather and the criminal great-grandfather. The legitimate businesses and the not quite legitimate foundations. "Especially because you're half Moretti, it means you're strong enough to be anything you want." "I want to be a doctor like you." "Then we'll make sure you have every opportunity to become one." "And a businesswoman like you." "That too." "And maybe learn to shoot like Papa?" I laughed despite myself. "Let's save that conversation for when you're older." We walked back to the main house together, Elena chattering about her day, Antonio babbling responses in toddler speak that only his sister seemed to understand. The family had expanded, grown, transformed in ways I could never have predicted. The Moretti organization was now one of Boston's most respected business entities. Real estate, construction, technology investments, all legitimate, all profitable. The criminal foundations had faded into history, carefully dismantled over years of strategic transitions and bold moves. What remained was power built on business acumen rather than violence. Dante had achieved what he'd promised, had transformed everything his father built into something his mother would have been proud of. And I'd been beside him every step, partner in building, co-parent in raising, wife in all the complicated ways that mattered. Dinner was loud and chaotic. Isabella and her husband, Tyler and Sarah with their twin daughters, Rosa and Marco, Anthony and Elizabeth, who'd gotten married 2 years ago. Family in all its messy, beautiful complexity. After the kids were in bed and the guests had departed, I found Dante in the greenhouse. His mother's greenhouse, which we'd expanded and renovated but never changed fundamentally. There you are. He was tending orchids that had finally bloomed after 3 years of stubborn resistance. I was beginning to think you'd gotten lost in paperwork. Just thinking about how far we've come, about everything that's changed. Any regrets? None. You? Only that I didn't find you sooner. That we wasted years before fate put us in the same cemetery. He set down his gardening tools, pulled me into his arms. But maybe that's the point. We needed those years apart to become the people who could build this life together. Deep thoughts from my reformed criminal husband. I'm allowed depth occasionally. He kissed me, and even after 8 years of marriage, it still made my heart race. Besides, fatherhood has made me philosophical. Watching Elena and Antonio grow up, thinking about the world they'll inherit, it puts things in perspective. What perspective? That legacy matters more than power. That building something lasting is harder than destroying something old. That the best thing I ever did was honor your father's deal instead of finding another way. I thought about that funeral 8 years ago, about grief and desperation and impossible choices, about the cemetery where we'd met and the life we'd built from that strange beginning. Dad knew, I said quietly, when he made that deal. He knew what you were capable of becoming. Not the criminal you'd been, but the man you could be with the right motivation. Your father was smarter than I gave him credit for. He understood that sometimes the best way to change someone is to give them something worth protecting. His hand found my cheek. He gave me you, and you gave me everything else. We stood in the greenhouse surrounded by his mother's flowers, living proof that beauty could grow from complicated soil. That darkness and light weren't opposites, but partners. That love could transform even the most broken foundations into something lasting. Come to bed, I said eventually. Tomorrow's going to be long. Elena's school presentation, Antonio's doctor appointment, the board meeting about the biotech acquisition. The glamorous life of legitimate business owners. Better than the alternative. Much better. He took my hand and we walked back to the house together, to our bedroom, to the life we'd built one impossible choice at a time. As I drifted towards sleep in his arms, I thought about the woman I'd been 8 years ago, the surgeon drowning in grief, the daughter who'd lost everything. That woman would never have imagined this life, this man, this complicated, beautiful family. But somewhere along the way, through cemetery visits and courtroom battles and midnight confessions, she'd transformed into someone stronger, someone who could love a criminal and change him, someone who could be changed in return, someone who could build an empire from grief and make it into something worth leaving to her children. I was Vivienne Moretti, wife, mother, partner, survivor, and I'd choose this life, this impossible, complicated, beautiful life, every single time. The end. Thank you for watching.